been walking through the Navy Exchange and wonder why all the Naval Pride and Heritage gear is horrifically ugly and you wouldn't actually wear it? Have you ever wanted some really cool gear and you just don't know where to go? Well, I got you, fam. Go to dgutspodcast.com immediately. Get yourself some Naval Pride and Heritage gear you'll actually wear in public. We're working on new designs all the time, open to ideas. We're trying to create a brand that lets you display that pride, but doesn't make you cringe. Also, if you're willing to and you're able to, please go to patreon.com/dgutspodcast. Pick one of the 5 tiers and become a patron today. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Don't Give Up the Ship Podcast, episode 126. It's kind of an Ask the Chief, but kind of not. It's me, Chief Bob, and Aaron Lee, who is a Command Master Chief. He gives his bio. He's been all over the place. Submariner. I've known him literally or of him for a long time. He's been in a lot of the same like AORs as me when I was on boats and stuff. So, but yeah, really cool dude. Planning on doing some stuff going forward with some videos where you get to like ask a flag level Command Master Chief questions and well, not questions, more so like he's going to address policy issues and like new programmatic changes and like stuff that comes out and like try to break it down in a digestible fashion, and we'll publish it on the YouTube channel and stuff. So maybe break it off as a podcast. I don't know. We haven't got that far yet. We've just kind of briefly discussed it, but you will definitely see Aaron around again. But yeah, we got into a lot of selection board stuff, advancement eval stuff, some of the, I think it's called like NTMS or something. I don't know. Something senior enlisted marketplace adjacent that Aaron got into a little bit. But yeah, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. It was a good time as always. And I really, really hope you all enjoy this. Check it out.
I listened to, what did I listen to? Oh, The Doctor today.
Oh yeah. The Stanford dude.
Yeah, that one's good. I mean,
yeah, I love that dude's fucking awesome. He's like a dean at Stanford. I'm like, when he got a hold of me, he's been on like Andrew Huberman's podcast. What the fuck do you want to talk to me for? Like, I was like, all right, cool. Like, and yeah, it was really good. He was
yeah. I don't even know if you asked, but like, does he regularly deal with military? Like, it sounded like a little bit.
Yeah, he said he's worked with him. I don't know how often, but I know based on some of the work he does, like the research topics that he's into or whatever. He works. He was super familiar with Greenville, which I was like, ooh. Yeah.
I don't know if that's the one you want to view. I mean, like, let's talk about Greenville. No.
Well, I mean, I could understand as civilians, especially like a dude his age, like them being familiar with that one. Cause I was on my first boat. The FT chief was the FTOW on Greenville when that happened. And his division used to run, and I'm going to edit this out. His division used to run around and be like, like, you can't. I'm like, you can't say that, dude. That's fucked up. But like,
too soon. Too soon. Yeah, never too soon. Never.
They'd be talking so much, and it was pretty recent. I mean, I was on that boat like 2002 to 2006. So it's fucking terrible. I was like, how's this dude still like? I mean, he was a first class or something when it happened. Like he was in the book and everything. That CO that got fired wrote, but. Yeah, well, dude. Nope. Shouldn't be having that conversation.
Nope.
So what's up? What are we talking about today? I don't know what the plan is. I'm just here.
You tell me. I mean, I was thinking
wanted to do this.
NTMS. We could talk about, because I'm a newbie to the NTMS process.
I don't even know what that is.
Well, you got to start with like
cool.
the quick background of all the things that you''t done and all that jazz.
Sure.
Since you never
Aaron's
put out
new
the
here,
other
sort
one.
of. Yeah, because I'm a piece of shit. I didn't edit the one you and Bob did.
Dude,
I mean, neither did I.
We talked for like 3 hours, so it was like.
Well, and it's the
fair.
only reason I haven't done it is because he didn't like footnote it. He just sent it to me, and so like, and I want to say he was like busy or something, so I was just like, I'll just do it. But you got to sit there for 3 hours and listen to the whole damn podcast to like bleep out the curse words. So I'm like,
back when you cared about that.
Yeah, well, I still care about it, sort of. Like, I do still bleep stuff out. Like, but that one podcast, I just decided to let it go, and because I felt like it needed to be heard that way, and so I was just like, I'm not. And I was so pissed. I was so pissed when it happened that I was like not about to sit there and edit it. I just like filtered it and uploaded it. But anyway,
I mean, yeah, we could talk about that too. I mean, I don't know about the specifics, but at least like the other end and
yeah,
I don't know if it's the other end. I should say what we should have done, because I think that's the catch, is the communication piece we don't talk about a lot. We can talk about ELD because we can go into that because CPO Training Team. I work for them.
Okay. Well, talking about Fleet CPO Training Team would be cool too. Like, not a lot of people know about that. Like, I invited them to. I forget how. I think I found out about them at SEA, and so I brought them to Fort Lee when I was there, which is now like Fort something else. I don't. They renamed it because we live in the Twilight Zone. Like nobody knew what it was. And then I brought him to Louisiana when I was there. Same thing. Like even my cob was like, what the fuck is a Fleet CPO Training Team? So that'd be a good one. And then I brought him to
I didn't even know they existed until I worked there.
Yeah. And it's ridiculous because they're really good. Like, I don't know. Like, I was a CMC.
Yeah. I was a CMC at the time. So that's,
so they're clearly doing a great job of communicating that they exist and that they're a resource and stuff. But that's like a conversation. I think it'd be fun to talk about accountability too. Like, and I don't mean like just normal sailor accountability. I mean like me and Ariana have been talking a bunch about like how would you? She's been talking to it's like the manpower something training and education or some force master chief. I think his name's Jason Nupp or something like that.
Yeah.
She's been talking to him a bunch recently. Like they sent out that memo about, I think it was quality of service, and he was like a point of contact or something like that. And so she just emailed him because Ariana doesn't give a fuck, and was like bombarding him with all these questions. And she's like out by like where she works is nearish to the Pentagon. So she went up there and had a meeting with him and all his homies and talked about all this stuff. And she got really fired up about the idea of like leadership accountability for like, so like, let's, for instance, like, it seems like a lot of, and I'm a big proponent of this, but it seems like a lot of the, like what you would call like the culture of the Chiefs mess, I guess, like the pirate sticker concept and all that crap. Like I'm not a giant fan, but it's mostly because it seems to have taken the place of something more substantive. So like, having a conversation about that, like why, like we don't have a more clear vision. Like I messaged you and I messaged Paul Kingsbury asking for like a job description of chief petty officers, and nobody could give it to me. And I'm just like, how does this not exist? She did. Ariana found some, it's like the occupational standards thing. And it's got like some pages with a bunch of like bullets and alphanumeric codes next to it that like sort of delineate it, but like it's a lot of granularity and not a lot of like clarity, I would say. Like it's not, I'm not a big fan of it as a source document for like who we are and what we do. But
I was half joking when I talked about the BMR, because I found a BMR that is a Command Master Chief BMR, which, and still have it, but this is, when was BMR's like 80,
super
80s?
Old.
Yeah.
Well, they were real when I joined, but like it wasn't. Yeah, it was more like.
I mean, maybe not. Yeah, maybe thousands. They stopped. They went away. You didn't get the book anymore. Because I was gonna say I had one as a second class, I think. Yeah. But yes, I found this one. I'm on the Ohio as the Cobb. I'm going through all the drawers and the Chiefs quarters because that's what you do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, who the hell's was this? But I looked at it. I'm like, well, this has been here forever. I'm taking this. This is mine now.
You can find some antiques on the boat when you clean out lockers, man.
but I was like, oh, I'll take this one. And sure enough, like, so half joking when I was like BMR, because it did have some stuff in there about like, hey, this is kind of your responsibilities, but I couldn't find anything else that, as a senior chief, you do this. As a chief, you do this.
Well, I don't even need like details as so much as I would like to be able to provide to someone like as a chief, these are generally your responsibilities. Kind of like, this is kind of what you should be striving for, which like mission, vision, guiding principles are great. Like, I think it's the best thing we have to point to and be like, this is who we are and what we do. Cause I think the CPO creed is largely just fluff. It's somebody wrote a really great pitting script in like 1986 and they're like, here, I just like didn't want to do a new one. So they just handed in their old homework as their new homework. But like, I don't, I'm not a giant fan. And then we decided to start teaching to the creed. And it's like, why don't we teach to the mission, vision, and guiding principles? Because there's a lot more clarity there. That looks like training objectives to me, or like learning objectives. And that's what we use on our evals. Like, why are we teaching to this like vague, like flowery worded filler document that just, it's like a feel good thing, where it's like, no, like I want clarity. I want to know what my mission is. And I feel like we don't really have that. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah,
sorry, I cut you off a little bit.
Well, no, I was just going to say that's a double-edged sword. Well, I'll just say my piece, and then you should probably like start in real so that he's not like introducing himself 3/4 of the way through.
Oh yeah, I know. We really should do that. But go ahead, say your piece first.
I was going to say that's a double-edged sword though, is that it's easy to, if you write something of like, thou shalt do X, Y, and Z, then you're going to get plenty of people who say that's not my job because it's not listed here. Whereas, if you keep it more vague, it's easier to say, hey, you need to go take care of this. And you are senior enough and competent enough that you should be able to figure out how to take care of this. So it kind of opens up what you can or should be able to go do.
That's why I didn't like the occupational standards thing, because there was too much granularity. And I'm not saying we should try to provide like a exact like list of all your duties and responsibilities. I'm just saying like a core values ethos type statement, like a document that we can point at and say like, these are our organizational values and this is like what we're striving to accomplish. Because like, I don't really think we have that. I think the mission, vision, guiding principles is pretty damn good. But I also think that I could probably walk around a naval base and pull 100 chiefs and 40 of them, and I'm probably being generous, 40 of them could like list all the mission, vision, guiding principles off the top of their head. It's like, okay, well then that's a problem. Like, it's a feeling that I have. It's not, I haven't done that. I probably should, but just walk around base with a camera and freak people out. All right. Aaron, let's do that thing that we were supposed to do 10 minutes ago. Just your background and experience in the military and all the things. You've heard the podcast, so go ahead, man.
No, this is my first time. Hanging out in
second time.
Chief Bob's lair. And so been in the Navy close to 26 years. Submarines, doing that thing. I was a cob on 2 submarines, the Good Boat Pennsylvania, the Good Boat Ohio, and a partial on a 2-month stint on the Good Boat Michigan. Well, we can talk about that if you want. And then did some cool shore duties, worked at squadron a couple times. So as the DCA, so I was a machinist mate before. And then at Squadron 17, just left there. Interesting job that I did kind of, I guess I could say outside submarine force, but not because it's still leadership relevant. Is a CPO training team.
Oh yeah, Fleet CPO Training Team.
Yep. So I was at a Pearl Harbor. I had 2 counterparts in San Diego, and we traveled the world teaching leadership and ethics, or we worked on enlisted leadership development. So we were kind of it was out, but we were building kind of the chief's stuff. And now there's officer stuff, which I'll be honest, I don't even know about. I want to dig into a little bit, but there's some JO stuff. So you
got to be part of the development of like the CPO leadership development class thing, the 1-4.
Yeah. Chiefs. So we did the 1-4 chiefs, and then I did in Hawaii, we basically did it during the season as a pilot. Everybody really enjoyed it. And so that carried over, and it's a little different now than what we started with, but with all things that happens. But I think it morphed into something really good.
Interesting. Do you think, like, because I'm curious, because you're probably one of the few people that has real life, like beta testing experience of like a formal curriculum type delivery of like chief season, like in the chief season. So like, do you, I've been saying for a long time, like, I think that the season should be formalized via like a master course document, and like we should have like concrete policy document driven like learning objectives. And then there's like some gray area it built in, but not as much as now, where like specific platforms and warfare communities can program in like their heritage and the specific demands of like their mission set and what they can accomplish where they are with what they have and stuff like that. But like, do you think that like it would be a net win for us to like have like a formal, so there's more parity? Like I know like there's some similarities like when you go from place to place, but like I don't know what your experience has been, but like the seasons I've seen, which I've like been a part of a bunch, but then I got to see like some surface ships do it and a recruiting district do it, and it's like there's wild variations as well as like the common threads that travel throughout it. So like, do you think we would benefit from something like that or not so much?
So I'll give you the Navy answer, right? So Navy answer is they built teaching to the creed to kind of fill that role, which you're thinking, like some sort of curriculum that's built and made for the season.
Yeah.
Aaron Lee thinks that I think there's plenty more time that we could probably put some, other things into the 6 weeks and maybe ELD would be one of them. Mm-hmm. I think if you have the right, and it's just like anything, if you have the right facilitators and enlisted leadership development, you are going to get a ton out of it. And I guess I'm kind of partial, but I'm not, because I've seen it. I've watched, E3s, E4s take ELD and change, come back and just are happy that they took the course or got to go through the course. At that time, it quasi wasn't mandatory. I know now that at least in this area, they just Group 9 just sent out a message basically saying that it shall be mandatory to try to get ahead of it. Because I know you had Toby Ruiz, Steve, and so you had those guys on the podcast, and they're like, "Hey, we don't have enough people going." And they're not wrong. At the end of the day, like although we have facilitated courses, we have online courses. People are just, it's not mandatory yet, right? It's going to be due in each one, 2026 or 2025, depending on which IA or the Chiefs course you look at. I know now it's going to be mandatory for Chiefs before they even get to go to SEA. So a Chief has to go through that Chief course. But
how long is that curriculum? Like how long does it take to go through the Chief ELD?
I think the Chief one's only 5 days.
So you could easily squeeze that into a season.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think there's room for it. It's just, how is it being facilitated? And is it taking away from teaching to the creed, which I think is ultimately the higher ups' baby.
Yeah, I think it's also hot garbage. Like not like it had great intentions. I don't think the topics are bad so much as like like when you go through, like I did a bunch of podcasts on them a few years ago, and I had all the master course documents printed out and I marked them up and did all it. And it's like, there's a ton of errors. There's a ton of nonsensical stuff. And they're trying to like formalize something that's really gray and wishy-washy by using the creed, which is why I think it's so ridiculous that we did that. Is like, why would you not, like, when you look at the mission, vision, guiding principles, it's a bunch of bullet points. It's learning objectives. Whereas the creed, it's like a bunch of blurbs that like you could interpret a bunch of different ways, including negatively, which is why I don't like the exalted stuff and like there's a bunch of other lot, like the nut doesn't appear in print. Like, why do everything has a procedure? I could give you a procedure for a peanut butter and jelly, but we don't have something where we have our duties and responsibilities in print. So it's like, it drives me nuts that they decided to go that way. But I do think their heart was in the right place, just picked the wrong source document.
I mean, seeing it in a couple of different AORs basically, and over a couple of years, some years are definitely in areas are definitely better than others. Right. Because it's very much obviously with you talking to one other person on there, you're not going to get the room wide feedback that you do when you're doing it with 50 people. And then depending on how comfortable they are with speaking up and where in the season it is. Because when it was at the beginning of the season, I feel like a lot of people were giving kind of canned answers. Usually for the first couple of days, it was not saying much, very canned, kind of awkward because they're still trying to figure out what anything is happening. And then later in the week or the years where they did it later in the season, people felt more comfortable speaking up more and having better conversations. And sure, it's not standardized at all, right? Because the stuff that I was around for that people talked about was wildly different from somewhere else, I'm sure. But at least there was some good discussion out of it, like a prompted, guided discussion, as opposed to just, clicking through the slides where you're obviously not going to get much out of it in that aspect.
A lot of the ones I saw were here regionally. Because I spent, besides Fort Lee, the whole time I was a chief, I was in this area, like AOR, right?
Must be nice.
Yeah, well, it was all right. I went coast to coast a million times. I only stayed in the same place one time, and it was when I retired, like from the boat to group. But they regionally they would have guys like Aaron doing it. So like we would come together in a big group in like the auditorium at the training building, and you got regional CMCs in there every day. So like how many chief selects? I don't even care what week it is during the season. Like how many chief selects that aren't like you, right? Like where you're going to be willing to say the uncomfortable part out loud or whatever. There's very few chief selects that are going to be willing to have a candid conversation when a regional CMC, like it was like the Flagstaff level CMCs or like the base CMC. It was like the region area CMCs giving facilitating the training. So I'm just like, it doesn't feel like that's going to be conducive to a chief select having a candid conversation. And it seems obvious, but that's how they ran it year after year.
The one thing I didn't mention. So I've been able to see Guam, Hawaii, Groton, because I was the Sem School CMC at 1.2. Forgot that one in the bio, but, and then here, right.
I wouldn't worry about that little guy.
Yeah.
I know that little guy.
And then here, and I will tell you, to me, that's a double-edged sword, at least maybe not a double-edged sword, but it, you could see pros and cons with having CMCs or COBs or Master Chiefs, are the only ones that are able to instruct it. I will tell you here, that's what I saw before I left. And then when I got to Groton, it was, senior chiefs, a bunch of, essentially like a bunch of folks that worked at SLC or at sub school that facilitated. And I don't know that I saw any difference with people that spoke up. I think it makes it important. It makes them think it's important to sit through that week of class if there's a mass chief or, like you said, the group CMC or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I guess it could go either way. I could see that.
True.
I will tell you, I mean, to me, it's more important of the person that's going to like facilitate it, I guess. Like, are they going to, really, get to the hearts of whatever they're facilitating, whether it be teaching the creed, ELD, because that's, you got to have a little passion with that stuff. And if you don't, you're just there to put a bullet in your eval, then it's like, why are you there?
And that's another question mark for me is like, with NLIC ELD, we've sort of gotten away from like the command deliver training that was such a dumpster fire before, but then like when we do the chief season, largely command deliver, like that's how we're running teaching the creed most of the time is, and like sometimes it's the region comes together, which is effectively the same as like ELD facilitation outside of those like two big learning sites. But
I will tell you,
most of the time the boat's doing it, or like the command locally is doing it. So it's just command delivered training essentially. So like if you don't have somebody in the mess that is that person you just described, then what,
well, I know, well, you hope that someone, if not,
right.
If you're the COB, you better be doing it.
There's a reason I ran the chief season every single year I was a chief. Cause it was just
I hear you. I was the 3 years I was the PT guy, it wasn't like I was getting a good eval bullet for I was going to be a COB. So they're like, no, but you're going to do it. It's like, okay, well,
do it because you're the guy that does it.
Yeah. But I guess I would say the only issue, I think it's important to have that region, big group type thing. Mm-hmm. The hard part with ELD and those large group situations is it's not made for large groups. It's made for, 20. And that was an issue that we had when we did the pilot, was that pack fleet themselves, I think, had like 48 future chiefs, right? They were going to all selects. And so that was we had to, kind of manage how we were going to do that. Add enough time into the schedule to allow everybody to have a voice, because that it's facilitated. It's not, it's not taught. Right. I'm not in an IG, going through it. I mean, I guess I am in an IG, but I'm supposed to be able to, ask questions and let them respond and stuff like that. And it's a little more difficult with a big group. In this case, Pac Northwest, I mean, they consistently do about 100 or more.
It's ridiculous.
And so you'd have to figure out how to manage that. Like, you'd have to, whoever is doing the facilitating of that course would have to, take a few weeks and separate it.
Right. I think the value added from the facilitation model gets diluted the bigger the group gets. Like, because of course, like there's going to be people that are more introverted that may have gotten pulled into the conversation when there's only 20 people in the room, but it's easy to hide in a room full of 100 people. So it feels like that's going to take.
And that's probably the person. Yeah. That's probably the person that you want to hear the message the most.
Right.
And that person's not going to talk because they're just going to sit in the back because they're one of, that was 99 or whatever.
That was definitely a hard spot out in Groton, right? With having 109 or whatever. Like the first year when I ran the teaching to the creed portion of it was like making sure that you had the varied presenters so that it wasn't just the same person talking to them the whole time. But then the side piece of that is that people become more comfortable with that person. But having, I think it was almost beneficial having the more senior people at the back, right? Like the Cobbs or the post tour Cobbs, almost like poking the bear, just trying to stir the pot to show like, hey, it's fine to say that you think this is stupid, to have somebody else or whatever, right? Have some dissenting opinion about something, because it showed that they were there, showed that they cared, but it also kind of helped push that like, hey, it's okay to disagree with this stuff, right? Like we're fine. Yeah. If you said this was stupid, this guy in the back didn't jump all over you and freak out, like Squadron 4 or 12 didn't lose their mind because you disagreed with something. Like if you get, even if it's just performative, like having somebody say something contrary to and say like, hey, I think this is dumb. It at least helps show some of that. But you're right. With a group of 109, like there was plenty of people that you just didn't hear from, and you would kind of try and pick them out. But with that many people, it's hard to keep track of tabs of 109 people in a room. Well, like probably like 85 that could make it to every one of them every day. Yeah.
But. And is the drive to do that just like the resources, essentially, just like the people to facilitate the rooms, or like is the drive to just like, just put them all in a room and we'll knock it out. You know what I mean? Or is it like we just don't have the facilitators to split them up into smaller groups, or like how does that happen?
Well, I think people
scheduling.
Yeah. I think people jam pack what they perceive as the season, and they jam pack that with other stuff. And then, so when they do that, they want to have, whether it be a week or 2 weeks where it's like, here's all the people that are going to go this week. Here's all the people that are going to go, you're going to go week 1, and you were here. So, and that's the way it was before while we were here. It's week 1, week 2, and you're done. Right. And then we move on to the other. Now we're doing, meet and greets and whatever your orders are. Right. But
like logistically though, there's only so many buildings that are also scheduled for other things. We don't just have a classroom set aside for 6 weeks a year. Everybody still has a day job, regardless of what position they're in.
That's why the like command delivered thing, or even like the regionally facilitated, it's like, why are we doing this? And like, I understand it's money and like, I get it. It's like nobody wants to cut a check for leadership development education, even though, like I think
NKOs.
It's not even NKO.
Yeah, all by NKO.
I've definitely heard you on previous podcasts like, just hire this guy, hire me. I'm like,
man,
like, I wish
cut Dave Deary a check and he'll fix it tomorrow. Or like even the idea in my head, it'd be like cobble it together. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to scale Dave Deary and ELF up to be like a nationwide entity. You could just like, hey, you got San Diego and you're going to like just be a resource that they can use. So it's like an equivalency, like ELD facilitation is one way, or this is a way, or I don't know. You know what I mean? Like there's so many people out there that I feel like could add value, and you would alleviate the demand for active duty military to do it as well. If you, as like an extra thing, like you could make it somebody like mine's primary job and Dave, one of his primary functions, and, you know, like name the, you know, like I was talking to somebody the other day on the phone about some of this stuff. And it was like regionally, like, just think about like who's sitting around being an old retired guy regionally where we are right now. Like I got Rick West, I got a bunch of old retired CMCs out of Group 9 and all these other like regional type dudes that were amazing. I got Eric Antoine, who I know listens to the podcast and like is my mentor and the dude that I go to when I have questions. Like and I'm sure there's a ton I don't even know about. So like, it just in this area alone, you could put together a pretty ridiculous program with people either like volunteering or like doing it as like a part-time gig or whatever. And I feel like you would not only like relieve active duty personnel of another responsibility layered on top of the holy shit amount that they already have, but then I think you'd get a better product because it's not my side hustle on top of being the department chief and being the, you know, CMO and whatever the hell else I'm doing, standing duty and all the other stuff. It's like, that's just what I do. I come in and I do that and that's it. And it's like, I don't know. I think there's an untapped resource for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's let's try to figure out how to say this politically correct. I think, you know, right now, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think the Navy right now is thinking about other stuff. You know, some of our competitors. And so the focus is, you know, how can we make our better? Yeah. And then, you know, how can we make our sailors, you know, I'll use the term warfighter, but, you know, use the term, and right now, that is not as important as the things that they're worried about, which I can't argue one way or the other. I love the idea. Well, I know you can. I can't argue one way or another.
Yeah.
But you know, do I think it is? Yeah, I think there's so much. I mean, enlisted leadership development, and here's the problem: is like because I lived and breathed this stuff for a long time. Mm-hmm. Well, I say a long time, but like 2 years I worked at Fleet CPO Training Team. You know, I got to see what it does, and you know, there's stuff in there that people just don't understand. Like there's stress tools in there that would help someone. As a matter of fact, like if you gave you went through ELD, right? You went through the facilitated course? Well,
no, I didn't. Yes. I tried a couple times right at the end and I couldn't. Well, every time I would book a facilitator class, I would get sent out on an SMI. And so I kept missing it. So I was like, I was facilitating getting people to the facilitators class. And then I kept not being able to go myself, unfortunately.
Okay. So on the first day, and the, you know, foundational, and I'd have to go back and see if they're still the same. I bet you it is. They give you this sheet, and the sheet has probably like 50 different things on it. You know, you recently divorced. Are you, you know, PCSing or about to PCS? Just random questions. But there's about 50 questions, and you grade it out. And if you just gave that to a chief, and a new sailor shows up or whatever, and you know, you have all these problems with communication, and you hand it to him, then you could look at it and go, holy cow, this guy's got, you know, pretty high stress, or he's got pretty low. A simple tool. And not a lot of people know about that. Right. And especially not a chief petty officer, because they just have not gone through or have not facilitated a course. But if those things would be so, like you get through there, and all of a sudden the guy's grades out like a 500. You can have a conversation. You can look at him, and now you can have a conversation. You can start talking about like, oh man, PCS, what are you stuck on? Oh, I haven't got my household goods. We still don't have our car, right? Blah, blah, blah. But these are all things that, bring out communication between the chief and that. And it's just a small thing that they do in the ELD course. I think is pretty important.
But that's the kind of stuff that like I point at, and it makes the argument for me in my mind that if we took leadership development and education as seriously as we took becoming better warfighters, because they're the same thing. Like, the better leadership we have, enlisted officer or otherwise, the better, like the more efficient we're going to be at accomplishing the mission, which is the idea. Like, we're putting the cart before the horse in my mind, and I'm far from a strategic military like mind as far as like the looking at the like geopolitical situation and deciding what to do. But like, I'm pretty convinced, I'm pretty like unshakably convinced, and I'd be open to somebody talking me out of it just because I'm curious. But like, I don't understand why it's not of paramount importance and just baked into everything that we do along the way, because of what you just said. Like, so if that sailor's super hyper stressed out and those things aren't being taken care of because the chief hasn't taken the time to even find out about them, so how can they address what they don't know about? And then that sailor goes off the rails, and then we have an unplanned loss, and now we're less efficient warfighters because I have a manning gap. And it's like, now I can't man a watch station, so now I can't, you know what I mean? And now I'm pulling from other boats, and like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And like, the recruiting and retention issue that we're having right now should be like a red flag to me, but I don't know, like, it doesn't seem like there's a big fundamental shift happening. It seems like ELD is like a baby step in the right direction. I like it. I like that they did it.
I mean,
but go,
I mean,
go
I think the mandatory piece is, because that was our, when we were piloting and working with this stuff and learn, we're just like, why is this not mandatory?
Right. And making it mandatory just leads to a waiver like SEA. So it's like, because quotas, because whatever, like, we don't have time to send them, or we don't have the throughput available, or whatever. And it's like, right now we have, according to Toby and Steve, we have the capacity, but no one's sending them. And it's like, are they not sending them because they don't know about it? Are they not sending them because manning is so atrocious that they just can't? Like, I don't know, like, but make it mandatory and then we can't send people anyway. What's the point of it? You're not really making it mandatory.
Yeah. I just think for example, I think the higher ups have to make it important, right? So the squadron right. One of the things that we talked about when I worked at squadron, you go through these training arrival conferences. So you show up in PDTP, like they used to call it. Yeah. And,
they call it something else now?
That's what, I mean, it depends on what platform, right? BN, GN, right. It depends. But anyway, PDTP period, you go through this training arrival conference. At the training arrival conference, before, it's just like, hey, when are you going to do these trainers? Firefighting is important, advanced firefighting, blah, 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 blah. Recently we've been talking about like, hey, what are you doing to build, camaraderie or togetherness or connectedness, whatever you want to call it. And then, when are you, how many people are you sending to enlisted leadership development? So that makes it important to now the boat.
Right.
So then fast forward, and now you got the group now sending out a message that says, hey, this is important. You're going to do this. Right. And so that, cause I'll tell you, like, from 1,000, it's just like any program in the military, right? From 1,000 miles away. I mean, I'll give you a great example. We can't even get people to put in awards for some, and I don't even mean junior sailors. I mean like senior sailors. Yeah. So, like Frank Lister or, pick big awards. And, the group expects that people are going to put awards in for their people. Right. And they don't. And so it's just like, hey man, like, everybody deserves, or, if you believe they need, or if you believe they deserve a recognition, no matter what, E9, E1, I don't care, just freaking do it. But you got to put the time in to do it. And those things are important. And the people that make it important are the next, I think it's, if the MCPON says this is super important, does that really affect Chief Schmatz on USS
USS Pickaboat? Not unless somebody like you is going, hey, this is important,
right?
And because they can see you.
Someone closer is, and so that's, I think that's where, we need to have people, I mean, I say like me, but like the squadron or whatever has to really advocate for getting this stuff done. And I think it'll help on the, maybe the unknown consequence for the boat is it's going to make them better. It's going to make their sailors better, and it's going to make their life and warfighting better and all the things.
Right.
Do you think though that with like, with that CPO training team, right, with traveling around and going to talk to people, it sounds, I know I talked to you about it before about whether it was more reactionary or like proactive with when you went to certain places, right? Like sometimes, like you said, people would request you, or you would request them to come out and talk to you. Sometimes it was like, hey, this boat is a hot soup sandwich and you need to go fix them. But like, do you think it's, having been there, is it worthwhile, or in that schedule, like when you go to that area, you can be like, hey, we're also going to teach like a real quick ELD thing, or like adding something like that in to help force that road show of like, hey, we're here. This is what we're going to talk about. And then while we're here, we're going to go tell this boat that they suck, and, or fix whoever wants us to come by. We've got a week in our schedule, pick a date, throw it in the Google Calendar. And then, next 2 weeks we go spend somewhere else and keep road showing it that way.
Sure. Yeah. So based on my experience, because it is a little different on the West Coast than it is on the East Coast. Both of them have a Fleet CPO training team, and keep in mind, I'm 3 years removed now. So, things could have changed, but, 2 ways, usually you're going to go speak to a group. So you're going to speak to a group either because the Fleet Master Chief says so, which was very rare for when I was there. Or you're going to get requested. Most people, I would say majority of people that request you normally aren't screwed up. Because I'm not just, I mean, some, like there was some where we're like, this is kind of an interesting dynamic. But most, right, they want more, right? The Chiefs quarters is just like, feed me more.
If you're requesting it, it shows that you already have an interest in improvement.
Right. So that's kind of how that part worked. As far as your question about, hey, we absolutely would go, for example, like we did a 2-week kind of, because the CPO training team curriculum at the time was 2 to 3 days. Like, so we would do a day with chiefs, maybe officers, and sometimes first classes. Sometimes it was only 2 days where it was just, chiefs and officers. Probably the best groups were guys that would have their captains kick it off. Basically saying, hey, you guys have a couple days and this is important, which I thought was really cool. And, so the Chiefs took ownership. Back to my point of, the guy closest to you is telling you it's important. But we would also do because at the time we were kind of pushing ELD. So we would also go out and facilitate a train the trainer course.
Okay.
And so, they could absolutely do that still, I'm sure. I know what happens now is NLIC, for example, they just came out a week ago. I think I was on travel, but like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and they taught a facilitated course. And then they also taught the new Chiefs course to the senior Chiefs and Master Chiefs. So they took 2 weeks, but I know they can absolutely do those things. CPO training team, like my big thing is like whoever's watching, poke your CMC or your COB and say, send out the newsletter. Cause in that newsletter tells you everybody that's involved, all the emails for those folks, and then how to contact them. And if you want them to come visit your command.
Yeah, they're awesome. I had them visit several times, and like I honestly, like, conversely to, I guess, the model at the time, like I thought, like obviously I want my Chiefs to get that, but the first classes would come out buzzing, like they loved it. I had a staff at the A school of 20, it was 25 staff members, and like we only had like 5 Chiefs. The rest of them were first classes primarily. We had a handful of seconds, but most of the time they would make first while they were there. So like majority of the staff was first classes, and they went in there with just the Fleet CPO training team. No Chiefs were in the room, And they came out buzzing afterwards. They loved it. At first, they had their mandatory fun faces on, but then like when they got done, like and it was cool because like all the chiefs just went out and taught the classes and freed up all the first classes to go, and it was like it was really cool. They really enjoyed it. So like I just highly encourage people to leverage that resource.
The places I like to go ideally is when you get the first classes first. So you get all the juicy details.
Yeah, you get all the, then you get to be like, hey,
Chiefs. And the Chiefs, right? And because there was some topics that then you talk about JOs and like my JO doesn't do, and then
you bring
you get the JOs. so it's like it was awesome. And then and then not to bring anything back unless it was a mandatory event, but you didn't bring anything back to the to the Fleet Master Chief. Right.
Brief either, really. There's like I mean, they sat down and talked to me, but it wasn't like I didn't get any like details of what was talked about. It was more just like you guys are doing pretty good and like maybe work on this a little bit and blah, blah, blah. And that was it. Because I was at SCL at the time when they came, and it was just like, it's just like a general conversation. They don't provide any real details. You don't get like a report at the end or anything like that.
Yeah, we definitely tried to. So if like the first classes or said something, we would bring it, figure a way to bring it up or what topic we could bring it up into the Chiefs one without even saying that. Yeah. Even saying it, like it was one of the sailors beforehand, right? It was just like, what if, what if this happened? And just see kind of like minds thinking and like, it's good.
Just sitting with a hypothetical, but it's super detailed.
It's not
well, no.
What if Jay Smith, and you're like, no, it's too accurate. What if John S. said?
We tried not to do that. That's poor form, obviously. Like these guys, unless it was like something, it had to be something serious where, just
right. But in there, you're not talking to the group about that. You're going back like, hey, Captain Sir, I want to sit down for a minute.
Like I said, the guys that or the commands that were really good, you'd have like the captain lead off or even the CMC lead off. And then at the end, the CMC or the captain would come and sit down with us and just see, what our input was. We would never just crush their souls because there was, for the most part, like I said, there was nothing that was just like, wow, we've never seen that before. Like all of it was like pretty like, oh, okay. I mean, it's just like every DOC survey, like surprise, guess what's going to be in there? Communication.
Suck. Communication.
Yeah. Some Cobb's being mean. Cobb's telling me to wear my uniform.
Plan of the day changes too much.
Seems, yes. The problems of the day or, whatever they used to call it.
The
predictions of the week. I mean, all that same stuff. So it was good.
Yeah. Interesting. What else do we have? I'm curious about go ahead.
We were going to talk about, since I'm
detailing
going to my new job.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I was going to ask about the, like the senior enlisted marketplace stuff. Like, can you talk about
NTMS,
that? Like, what is that? Or like, what's the goal?
Interesting. I guess keep in mind, I'm brandy spanking new. So I haven't even got there. I'm on leave right now, but, so NTMS, so the Navy, oh my God, talent management system. So basically what it is all flag jobs. You go into this pile, and they're going to do a couple things. One is they're going to look for all the folks that would probably fit in that talent level of that job. And just based on my experience, what happens is, so let's say you have all these folks, that could fill the group job. And so
we're talking about like the group CMC, right?
Yeah, for me, it'd be
all the staff jobs.
Well, this is for every, like, this is all Navy flag jobs.
Okay.
So you go through this pot. Now that pot could be 100 people, or 100 CMCs, and then they're going to reduce it down to a small group by looking at talent or for example, if I wanted to go be NETSI force, right? So Naval Education Training Command. They could look at me and say, well, he was the CMC of sub school. So he could fit in that. I got some talent in that. Yeah. I have some experience there. I could advise the Admiral of things all that deal with training. CPO Training Team, right? Oh, there's another one, right? So now I'm in the pot of these people. So then the Force and Fleet Master Chiefs or whatever ISIC, not the ISICs, but the Force and Fleet, anybody else on that flag ring will reduce that list down to a smaller list. The Admiral also has a say. So the Admiral has, well, literally, I guess he has kind of 2 steps. One is he comes up with some kind of a sheet that has like, and we can call it a resume. They call it KSAs. I don't know exactly know what the acronym is, but
key skills and attributes.
Look at the big brain on.
Nerd alert. Nerd alert.
But yeah, so he says,
Jamie, bring that up.
So he said, look at the big brain on Bob. He says he has all these, things that he wants, right? Yeah. So you got the fleets and forces saying, hey, these are what we want. You got the Admiral saying, hey, this is what I want. And they're going to mesh those 2 together and come up with their top 4. They're going to give the top 2 to the Admiral. And so he's going to look at those 2 and he can say, hey man, I don't want either of these guys. And then he'll get the next 2. Right. But usually for the most part, he'll look at the top 2 and he'll do an interview. So you do an interview with the Admiral.
Can the Admiral circumvent the whole thing by doing the by name request thing?
So no, not anymore. But what I will tell you is you could probably get, if you're an Admiral, and I hope they don't do this.
Game the system.
You could game the system a little bit and be like, well,
I do. I hope they hear this.
I could say, hey, I want a a cook with projects experience from the West Coast who also happen to run a schoolhouse.
Too late.
Right, but you could go through that, right? Hypothetically.
But you could see how that could really reduce the, I want someone that's
like worked with hyper specific resume to exactly the person they want. And then,
I want a machinist mate that's worked with females on submarines that's done, both BN and GN. You're starting to narrow down, who can interview for this job. So anyway, so you go through the interview process and then you get selected. And basically, I got selected for that future job. Right. I will tell you, if you don't get selected, that you'll get an email that basically says, sorry. And I've been through that probably 8 times.
Do they explain why you weren't selected at all or just no, sorry?
So to make it more there's some good and bad. So to make it more transparent, what they do say is, hey, reach out to your local ISIC or, force. And the funny part was when I was
call your dad.
Right. Yeah. Call your dad. The funny part was that when I was in sub school, I was competing with my ISIC guy.
Right.
And so I couldn't really call him to be like, hey bro, why didn't we get this job? And
because I
yeah. Right. But I mean, he didn't get it either. Right. But so I had to reach out to, Force Harris at the time. And he, it was really good. Like he talked to me through. Cool. So I started to get an understanding. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these jobs, I absolutely, I'm not going to go work at Nextcom. Like it was just, that may have been a job that I get this email for that says, hey, sorry, bro, you didn't make it. What? Surprise. I'm not going to work at, whatever logistics or whatever, pick a strike group that doesn't involve a submarine. Got it. I mean, I there were some where I was like, kind of like, oh, well, I could do this one. This would maybe.
Right.
No. And so as it got closer and I obviously built more experience with jobs, then, I did get picked up for the group job.
Okay. This is kind of a weird pivot, but because you're able to call your dad, metaphorically, and get the feedback on why you weren't selected. Why do you think, and I'm forecasting the angry mob of board eligible first classes that are going to come for our heads because you get to ask why you weren't selected, and all these non-selected board eligible first classes don't get any feedback whatsoever. And as a board member, I remember sitting there being frustrated by the fact that I couldn't type 3 sentences into INSEPs or something just to provide them with a little bit of feedback, even though like I guess I don't know if they're going to get selected while I'm grading their record, but I could at least provide some feedback on the record generally so that they have an idea of one way or the other. Why do you think that they won't do that? Like they won't provide any type of feedback? And I understand the scale of it, and I felt hurried the entire time I was there, which I imagine when you sat boards, you felt the same way. Like they're like, come on, we got to grade these records, and now that we got to tank everything, they're like, oh, I got to go fucking tank all these records, and so they're like, you feel rushed the entire time. And considering the gravity of what we're doing, I'm like, I was the number they were calling out in the tank, like, oh, come on, you got to vote. Because I'm like, no, I'm like, if I didn't grade this package, I'm going to sit here and analyze those screens because that's what I'm here to do. Yeah. You're not going to like hustle me through this because what if I miss something? So like, why do you think that we're not allowed to provide that feedback in any way, really?
I honestly don't. I mean,
really?
I
called my dad.
I called my my grasping at straws would just be that you just create the ability for somebody to also kind of game the system and just check the boxes that are like you said. Well, you want that already. These 7 things to some extent, but if you did that already, if you did that already to the extent that you're saying, you don't need that feedback because you already have what they want, right?
You do when you're the type of person that has like a really great record and there's good quotas and you feel like you've done exactly what you're describing and you're still not selected. Cause that stuff happens a lot. I've reviewed records where I'm like, dude, I don't know why you didn't get selected.
Just wait till numbers are better.
That's my answer. That's my answer. Usually is like quotas are like above everything else. Quotas are going to win. So it's like, and the best example of that, and like you guys will never see this, but if you ever get a chance, like for Aaron, right, or even Bob, like eventually just walk into the supply panel and look, or like a tank, and watch the RS's records get briefed. Every one of those records sounded like First Class Jesus. Every like Sailor of the Year and this and that, and like, and it was like half of them didn't get selected because their quotas are abysmal. And so it's like, it's brutal because I'm like, for me, and I've talked about this pretty frankly, it's like the strength of the candidates the year I was at the 7 board was professionally embarrassing. Like I wanted to give back 75% of our quotas. I wanted to give them to the RSs. And it was just like, that's not how that works, obviously, but like, it's like, I was disgusted with the quality of our candidates. So there are people making chief or, being recommended for selection that I'm just like, burying my face in my hands, but then these poor RSs aren't making it because quotas. And it's just like, it's gross, but it'd be nice to be able to provide some type of feedback. Cause sometimes it's like, it's weird stuff, like it's like the type of stuff that, because there are some idiosyncrasies to the board process that aren't like explicitly stated in an ECP or like a precepts and board convening letter type document. Like
that's what I was going to say. Like, I think we do submarine force. Mm-hmm. I think we do our best to give them that on the front end.
I agree. Yeah.
Better. And I will say better than most, maybe not all, but most other,
right.
Rates
communities.
Communities.
Their ECP like the considerations from E6, E7, most non-submarine ratings, it's super subjective and like like these really vague descriptions of the things that leave a lot of like room for interpretation. Whereas ours are like fully qualified, best qualified. And it like lists stuff and it's like very explicit and obvious.
But you've said in the past though, that like when you went to the board, that also shot us in the foot where you would have somebody who's dominating on a boat and they're like, well, but he's not the LPO. And you're like, yeah, because he just happened to be an LS and there's only 3 of them and there's a second first class. And
it shot us in the foot. It shot us in the foot when I was there. I think in my analysis, because we commingled submariners with other surface ratings. Like I am like, and I think Aaron will agree with this, but I don't know if you've seen surface records in this type of detail. Cause like when I went there and I thought I was grading CSS records. I thought that's what I was there to do. Turns out I'm grading everything based on a 5-minute SME brief from a surface RS. I'm like, I'm infinitely more qualified to grade a submarine A-ganger's record than I am a surface RS's record. Like infinite, because you don't have to explain submarines to me, but a surface RS, like they were making, there was a year, it was like, I think it was 2 years ago, where some miscommunication between the people that should have been tracking this, and there was no CSS on the 8-9 board. Like there was an LSS, and I know the guy because I used to work with him, and he told them very explicitly, like, thou shalt not select a CSSC for senior chief if they're not qualified dive. And then what did they do? Went and like it all up and selected a bunch of dudes that were qualified dive. And it's just like, granted, like if a CSS was there, it would have helped, but it's not like if a surface guy is grading that record, they're going to give it a better grade. And then when you bring it into the tank, especially once you get rolling and like we're grading all these records, a lot of times people are going to get lazy and they're not going to do what I did, where I was real slow and methodical because I'm like, this is too important to screw up. But like they just vote in alignment with that grade, and they're not looking that hard, and they're not like. And then you get, even for me when I'm in the tank going, hey, is the guy qualified leading CSS? No, then what are we talking about? He's not fully qualified. But in their mind, they saw this like nice stuff that made him look like a strong record that should get a strong grade. And it's like, but he's not fully qualified. Next record. Like, what are we even talking about? And so it got convoluted, but I think it was mostly because we were a commingled panel. Like if I had been in there like that, there's not a single one that would squeak by a room full of submariners, not qualified dive. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just not, and even a qual generally, like we made a fully qualified criteria. You have to be qualified leading CSS. It's a qual they created in like 2017 and put in CTQS and blah, blah, blah. But we said as a community, we're making this mandatory for fully qualified for E7. And then went in there and completely didn't follow our own rule at all because banana, you know, and I was jumping up and down about it in the tank, freaking out. And then when we walked out, I walked up to the board, wasn't our panel SEL. It was like the Millington rep guy. It was some CMC that worked at Millington that was in the room with us. And I said, what the fuck? You know, like we just said, like in the room, we briefed it. And then in the room, I'm freaking out about, he's like, you should have brought it up in the tank. It's too late now. I'm like, I was sitting right behind you freaking out. Like, were you not paying attention? Like I called it out every single time it wasn't there. And we still just graded it and moved on because we got to finish all these records. Day, I don't even remember, dude.
Well, I kind of do. So you were talking about like selection board feedback, right? And because you were talking about like how if he goes talks to his dad to get feedback, and I would say that in that same vein, that's exactly what we tell people to do, right? You don't get selected for chief. Go talk to your chief or go talk to other chiefs and ask them to look over your record and say, hey, can you tell me what you think did or didn't work? And it's the same thing with him when he's talking to his mentors about it, right? They didn't sit the CMC selection board, so they don't actually know. They're just going to base it off of their experience, the same as you would off of any first class that doesn't get picked up. Yeah. But with your feedback, I agree with you in the sense that there should be like, I told you this before too, that it should just be like, it's super easy to narrow down. The hard part is you'd have to come back after you know who the list is, and then you'd have to go through everybody's record who didn't make it again and kind of re-review. But like you said, you could almost go through ahead of time and check. Like my thought would be
grading it.
Right. My thought would be there's like 4 boxes, right, that you could check. Either missing qualifications, length of sustained superior performance, or however you phrase that, right? Like you haven't been good enough long enough, something wrong or missing in your record, like an administrative issue. Your evals, however you phrase that, like they're just not good enough long enough.
Right.
You're missing required quals, right? Or you could just check like quota limited or quota limited,
and then limited,
right? I was gonna say limitations, and I changed it.
We
halfway,
make words
right?
here on DGUTS podcast.
But what I mean is, if you could check a couple of those boxes when you grade it, that just goes into the background. Nobody sees it while you're briefing it in the tank,
and that would take 2 seconds.
If
they made a canned list of like,
you check 2 or 3
main
or
reason,
none,
or Like I can number them in order of importance or something. Like, yeah.
Well, you could just check whichever ones you want, right? And if you think that they're like, you're grading their record and you're like, this person is, the next war hero. And so you check quota limited and that's it.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't make it, that's the only reason, right? And then you send it through. If they make it, all that just disappears and never makes it back to them because who cares?
Right.
But then if they don't make it, then those magic check boxes appear and you go, oh, cool. I was a 1 and a 3 this time. So that means I need to have better, longer.
Genius. Millington, make it so.
Yeah. I was going to say, I guess, next time I talk to big people, I'll go give them Bob's idea.
Bob. Hey, man. That's right. Big brain Bob.
You could distill it because there's those
a
are
reason
the only
he's your
options, right?
Stepchild. It's Big Brain Bob.
But there's only like 4 reasons like that I can think of sitting here right this second that you would not make it, right? Mm-hmm. There's either not enough quotas, there's something wrong with your record, you don't have something required, or you just haven't been
and you could say like
good enough long enough, right?
You could have one that's like did not meet fully qualified criteria too, so that they know like there's something like
however you phrase that button.
Yeah. Because then it's like
a button that basically says, look at your ECP and do what that says.
Did not meet ECP.
Go do what we already told you to do, right? Like just go do what we already told you to do.
That's what the final revision of this will be, is like they're just going to make an automatic function that like if they're not selected, it's just going to say did not meet ECP criteria, and then you just have to figure out what that means. like we're not going to get options and be able to provide any type of nuance. It's just going to be like didn't meet the ECP criteria. All right, which one?
So you wouldn't be so stressed at the board, right? Well, right, there's that, but you wouldn't be because what they would do is they would push it even further to where before your record goes off, they'll automate something into BOL so that you check like scan record and it's going to be like, nope, didn't meet this requirement. And then you're going to be like, cool. And your record's not even going to go. So like, or you'll be sitting there screening through them and it's going to pop up with an alert saying missing 1 and 3. Sorry.
If they could use AI to like screen out the ones that aren't fully qualified, like if you don't see LPO in a record, just delete those ones. If only it's fully qualified.
But then when it comes to you, you're going to see
at all ever and wouldn't ruin the careers or advancement prospects
that would be
anyone has.
It would be all bad, but that's what would happen, right? It would be like best intentions gone awry.
Skynet has become self-aware.
Not to make everybody back to reality, but like I think NTMS, right? Like the stuff we were talking about, there is no beforehand with what we're talking about. There is a lot of beforehand, right?
That's true.
There's not a lot of. There's not a lot.
There's just logic with what you have in experience.
Yeah, NTMS, and Bob was correct. Like, the guy I talked to at that time, it was, when I didn't get selected, was Force Harris, who may or may not have anything to do with why I did or didn't get selected. But again, he's just like a guy that a first class would, a chief that a first class would go to say why. You looked at my record, you saw the things. Why do you think I didn't make it? So do I think it's a really cool idea to, have some blocks, even if one of them's other, because I think that the person that's going through, it wouldn't even have to go up through the tank. Like if you did not meet, if you weren't fully qualified or whatever you want to call that, that's an easy thing for someone that's reviewing the record to say.
Yeah, but then that reopens the collusion Pandora's box. I think like the whole reason we take them all the tank, which I don't think it fixes all the problems, but it makes collusion really. No,
he's saying don't take it to the tank.
No.
That's what I was saying too.
I'm saying it can still go to that record can still go to the tank.
The record, not the reasoning.
Right, but the guy that's reviewing the record can say like, "Hey, he didn't meet."
Oh, okay. I thought you meant
that can push up.
Me as a board member grading the record. If I click doesn't meet fully qualified, then it's not going to go to the tank. I'm like, that's
no. I think all that stuff. All right. I think stuff has to go. Like all that stuff has to go to the tank.
No, because there's too many intangibles, right? Though. Like If you have like a letter to the board that explains why you couldn't be the LPO because you were number 7 in first classes on this miracle boat, right? That like. Yeah, it just wasn't possible, but I did X, Y, and Z, or your record shows other things that make up for that lack of something that's, you realize isn't possible for every person to have, then like that shouldn't exclude you from being able to make it potentially.
Well, and two, like going to the like once the tank is done, like it's done. I mean, barring like the
regrade,
CNP
record review,
well, CNP, or if there's some regrade or something. But for the most part, like those are the guys that made it. So you want to be able to, if you're going to give a reason, you want to give that reason. And let's say that guy did make it somehow in the tank. He did make it. So then that just check mark goes away, and the dude made it.
They never see it. Never matters.
Yeah, they never see it. Like it doesn't matter. Yeah. But you, for example, like old Chief Bob back here, someone poops on their face because he doesn't have MTS, but he gets to his boat and he qualified. I had to bring it up.
You had to because he didn't make senior chief because he didn't qualify MTS. It's simple
collusion.
It's simple
collusion.
But hold on, there's a bright side to everything. So when he goes back to the boat, which he is now, like he qualifies dive, requalifies chief of the watch, does all the things. Perfect. Now, he doesn't have that one thing to maybe someone will not like, but he got all these other things, and so now he's he can pass that guy's record review.
So then my question would be, I have a feeling that it's very subjective, but how long? Right, because obviously I didn't do MTS for my million reasons that's a whole episode in its own. But so I get back to the boat, qualify all the things that I possibly can, right? And I'm the dude. How long does that, like, my thought is I'm a very logical person with my thought process on things. And so it's like, okay, well, he doesn't have a time machine, so he can't go back and do anything about it. So how long do you punish that person for not doing that thing that they can't do anything about anymore?
I don't think it's,
or do you just move on and go,
not a punishment. Yeah, it's not a punishment. The way
you just go, okay, well, next command, did he do what he's supposed to do there? Cool, then we moved on with life and we don't care.
And it's not like you're being above Riska and being a ranked EP and all those things like go out the window just because you didn't qualify MTS. Like, it's more like it's more like we're going to tally up the scores for everybody and you would have gotten 2 more points, or like I'm making that number up. It's not, there's no numerical value, but like you would have gotten more favorable grading if you had qualified MTS, but it's not like a huge thing. Like you weren't LPO at sea going up for chief, right? So it's like you would have gotten a little bit more of a consideration, and they're going to notice that you didn't qualify MTS while you were an instructor. Yeah. But if you go to the boat and you're crushing it just like you did at best, it's like you're not going to get held back from promotion as if they have a grudge. It's just you're just not.
It's not like a mask that's going to slow you down longer.
No, it's more like if we lined up. Yeah, if we lined you up with your clone and your clone is qualified MTS, they would make it before you. That's the only.
Yeah, no, I get that. So then also with that,
it might not even make. It's not that you won't make it with that person, your clone that's MTS qualified. It'll be that guy may be higher than you,
a slightly higher score. Yeah.
Right now, but now where that could be a pain in the ass is if they make 6 and you're 7.
Right,
and that's the part that. To me, and I'm going to beat on
I can
Bob
still say that I'm top 10 EW chief in the Navy because they only made 9 and nobody can prove that I'm not number 10.
That's fair.
You can say that.
Can't prove me wrong.
Yeah. I mean,
I will tell, I will tell every sailor the same thing I've told the Bob behind me, which is, like they give you the playbook, like, you have all the plays. All you got to do is
don't follow it. It's going to haunt you.
It's going to get you. And the unfortunate part is there is some, projects is one that it's just like they've done leaps and bounds of where they were to explain what it is you guys do. But I think there's still room to grow with that because there's all these niches that guys are like, hey man, like this is the cool stuff. And it is cool stuff. But it's not on any. It doesn't. You can't write that down on any.
They try
like if you're
all the if you're a quarter, there's a description of like the watch station.
But there's still a lot of like. There's so many commands because at least for mine, right? They listed by command. If you're this command and you qualified these handful of things, right? Which is great, and those are probably majority. But think about there's so many, like the Navy is massive, right? So if you went to go do, like if you went to JCU, right, to go to the joint comms, but let's say you're a Navy T, right? I'm sure they have a Navy T billet at one of those high speed, low drag commands, and you're doing nothing but like working with SEAL teams or whoever.
Yeah.
If I was sitting aboard, I'd be like, there's zero ocean that they worried. Like there was zero charts that they worried about. They did a bunch of great stuff. That's not their job. I don't care.
Yeah.
To some extent. Right. And I get that there's a lot.
Though, yeah.
No, but that's still, to his point, that's still something that's not explained necessarily. Like you could go be dominating the why can't I think of the name of the community? You interviewed the dude from there too. The Go Fast community.
Oh, SWIC?
Well, not just SWIC. What's the...
Like Naval Special Warfare?
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, the NSW. That was the acronym I was thinking of. Yeah. But the NSW community, right? Like those people aren't, at least on mine, I know there's tons of comms billets, right? I guess I'm not technically comms anymore, but I'm sure they have land guys also. But at least for my rate specifically, because I haven't dug through every rates ladder or ECP because I don't care that much. But like for mine specifically, none of that's on there. And so again, no matter what you do there, you're going to be at some sort of disadvantage because you're just hoping that the people interpreting it know a guy, that somebody there has the experience, that there's something. Like when you go off the beaten path, you're hoping that somebody is in your corner. As opposed to the obvious, to your point, when you were talking about you reviewing RSs, right? You're looking at an RS package and you have their ladder and you go, I don't know what they do. I'm reading their ladder. If they did something external to that, it's all question marks and fuzziness.
But I don't know that the Naval Special Warfare example is a good one. Like I could see submarine special projects being that, like being confusing to some people. That don't have exposure to projects at a submarine panel, but like I would think that there's somebody in the room does and they can explain it. But as far as like Naval Special Warfare exposure, like I can tell you, like whenever there was cool guy stuff on EVA, like there was just like a natural enthusiasm and just understanding that they're doing hard things. And so there was a couple times where they're like, they haven't been to sea in 7 years. I'm like, they were at Naval Special Warfare Group, whatever, and it's coded as sea duty, idiot, and you had to like point it out.
Neither
just because it's not Hayes grade doesn't mean it's not sea duty. You know what I mean? They were just deploying to AFRICOM and all this other crazy stuff, and you're just like, you're like, look at the thing. It's coded as sea duty. You're like, what the fuck? It even says, you don't even have to know the codes. It says sea shore. Like, and so, but like most of the time when you got even like, there was one where like, and I'm not like, I just remember this because it was so unique, but like he got pulled because of a skill he had. He was an LS and got pulled for a very specific skill that had nothing to do with logistics. And he was working at like a super secret squirrel job. And he like sent this really long letter to the board that explained in excruciating detail, like what he was doing, why he was doing it, that he didn't have a choice, and what the command was doing to try to like help him meet the ECP criteria in the LS community while still like doing this thing that they decided was more important than being an LS. And so it was like, even that one was really interesting. And we briefed as like, I graded it and we briefed it in a way that it was like, I'm pretty sure the kid made it, but I don't really remember.
That's how, like, there's a dude in my SEA class who was an Airedale, like an air mechanic, I think, who'd been a chief for like 12 years and he just retired, was never able to put on senior chief, but he'd done stuff like, I think he said he spent 6 years with SEAL teams as a linguist because he naturally spoke Farsi or something, right? Yep, and so I don't know how that gets identified, but somehow he got dragged in to go work with a bunch of SEALs. And he's like, dude, I'm an air mechanic. Like I fix airplanes, right. But yes, I know the language, I know the culture, and he was great. And
they should just like force convert people like that to like CTI or whatever. Like it doesn't make any sense to me that they like make that poor guy struggle through the advancement like pathway for a job he's never gonna do. And like,
well, then he went to go work at OCS. He was a red rope at OCS after that, which also But I mean, it was awesome. Like the good thing is he had a really good attitude, and he was very much like, hey, I know what I did was important. Who cares? Like that I didn't get paid. I didn't get advanced, whatever.
If they made him a CTI, he could have been a Master Chief just for being awesome. So it's like,
right. Exactly.
It's kind of a gooned up way of populating those billets. It's like just force. If you're going to make him do that job, you might as well put him in the right career path.
Well, I think that a lot of that, like I was talking to one of the other guys about this recently because he was asking like, hey, knowing that you went there and were kind of at a disadvantage for that, would you do it again or do you regret it? And I said, no, but it takes a lot of like personal decision beforehand of like, what's important to you, right? Are you trying to go through, because the Navy gives you the ladder and tells you exactly what to do, 1 through 9, just do X, Y, Z. And if you don't do that, you have to understand you might be at a disadvantage. Right. You might not, but you are potentially at a disadvantage to go do something else. And as long as you get what you wanted out of doing something else, then it wasn't a loss. You just had to know going into it.
If I had made a different decision leaving Virginia, I probably would have retired as senior chief because they offered me the 3MC job at SDV Team 1 in Hawaii. And I was just like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And I was coded as sea duty too. So I would have just went to shore duty and then retired. And so, but then I called a few mentors and they're like, do you want to be a COB or not? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you have to go to a submarine to qualify dive because they wouldn't let me qualify on Carter. I tried. And so like I had to go back to a boat to qualify dive so that I could qualify COB. And also when I was making the decision, I was still a chief. I hadn't made senior chief yet, even though it would have come no matter what decision I made. I just didn't know it yet. So when I made the decision, I'm like I got to qualify dive to make senior chief. I got to qualify dive to be a COB. That's what I want to do. I'm like, damn it. And so then I, picked the submarine and then made senior chief 5 minutes later. And then like Rio was like, but then like I had to get back here because of Ashley anyway. So, but yeah.
But so, okay. So back to your CPO training team stuff with going around, like, I don't know how much dead time was in your, say, annual calendar where you were kind of waiting on something, or like, is it feasible? Like, do you think it would make sense to beef up who goes to those billets and then send more, like just proactively, like, hey, we're coming here, like say they're coming to Bangor and it's like, today we're going to do this boat, then tomorrow the next boat, and we're just going to talk to everybody preemptively. I don't care if anybody asked or it's necessary, just to make sure that everybody, gets forced from Big Navy to get that training? Or is that calendar and like, I don't know what any of that logistically looks like or how big the group is of trainers.
I don't know what it is now either, but what I can tell you is that what they did. So like I told you earlier, East Coast and West Coast was a little differently built. East Coast works directly for the Fleet Master Chief. Like that's what they do. I worked with the Fleet Master Chief, but technically I worked for NLIC. NLIC is Navy Leadership Ethics Command. And so what they have done is they've essentially, and this is kind of what, Toby was talking about, is they have built up a group to now go out and teach the good fight of ELD. Maybe not the CPO training team piece like you're talking about, which is only going to be, it's all CMCs. That's who those guys are. It's like, depending, like three on each coast CMCs, and they go out and they'll do select groups. But NLIC and ELD themselves have built up a group, and I don't remember the exact number, but they are like ready to work
to do the trainer.
Yeah,
they said they do. Yeah, mobile training teams on like ready to go to go out.
Yeah, like I said, they just came
and do facilitators things. So
I mean, obviously, with anything, right? Stuff costs money, so they want to combine as much groups as they can. And for example, that's why when they came out here, they taught 2 courses, right? They taught the normal facilitator, they train the trainer for the ELD, and then they train the Chiefs one, which is only senior chiefs and master chiefs can teach that.
So they can birth more.
Right. So they put it all together, and they would do the same thing with us when we'd go out. And I'll be honest, I'm not really sure. I'll tell you, like my end of CPO training team was COVID, and so basically my hang around time was a lot.
There's a lot.
And I was, and now keep in mind, I think the guys above me were trying to give me a break, and that's why they sent me to CPO Training Team to give me kind of a little break, because I had been doing. I was a cob for almost 5 years,
drilling and killing.
Yeah, for like
he was
4
a cob
years,
of 2 submarines,
months.
like at the same time. Like he was everybody's cob.
Yeah, yeah. So there, yeah, I was the GN cob of the West Coast. Like
basically just Squadron 19.
Yes, I was like
just like conquering submarines like a Viking, just like going around like this is mine now.
So then for the CPO training team, is that something that somebody said like, hey, you should go do this? Do you just go apply for it? Like at that point, were you just kind of like, what?
Honestly, they told me, they're like, hey, we've got this job for you. It'll give you a little bit of a break. And I was like, cool, what is it? And they said CPO training team. I was like, I have no idea what that is. Let me look it up. Let me think about it. Where is it at? Right. And zero understanding of what it was.
No preconceived notions.
Nope. Other than I called a few people and they're like, hey, that's great. You go and do this. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And then I hung out with 2 really good guys. They're both retired now, but, and they were kind of the keepers of it in San Diego. And, man, I had a great time. Like,
learned that job.
It kind of was
being an FA at Senior Enlisted Academy were like my 2 dream jobs. And I could have been an FA. There was a job for a CSS as I was retiring, and I was just like, I don't want to move to Rhode Island.
Should have done it.
But that would have been
cool.
Dude, it was so tempting. We talked about it. Me and my wife had a serious conversation about it, but
Rhode Island's cool. That's probably my favorite New England state.
We would have come back here, I think. So like I'm like another coast to coast move, like knowing we're not going to stay there. I was just like, I can't. And she was still at the shipyard. And so it just didn't make any sense. Yeah. Yeah. Kind
of cool is that during CPO training team in Hawaii, the fleet master chief happened to be now the McPond. So it was nice to have that guy to talk to and mentor. Great mentor, great person to talk to. He does actually give a shit, and he's just a normal guy. So he's a boatswain's mate. Come on, like that's
right. I don't believe he doesn't care or anything. I don't. And I also like, I don't think he's a bad dude. I just think he's
no. Like, I'm not saying he does. Like, I'm not saying like, I don't think you thought that. I think he just, he's a guy that he's just a real person, right? So he listens and he understands, communicates, well, kind of tells you what he needs, what he wants. And I'd work for him again in a second. Like if today they were like, sorry, guy that's there, you're, this new EA guy is going to be there. Like, I would raise my hand and I'd take it. Just a down to earth, and his wife's awesome. Like, they're good people to be leading the fleet. I know that's a whole crazy, and I've listened to a couple of your podcasts about the Reddit, which I haven't seen. I'm kind of disappointed because I haven't seen anything again. I'm hoping that, and maybe you have, because I'm just not a big Reddit guy.
Right. I haven't followed it super closely, but I've had some people follow up with me and let me know that like that Navy PAO account, which I know isn't like him directly, but it's like his office is like continuing to take action and follow up on a lot of the threads. But I don't think they fully understood the assignment, like when they signed, and that was my prediction. And I think that's exactly what happened, was like, they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. And not only did they get just bombarded with like questions and all these like comments and threads and stuff, but they weren't just like, hey, why can't we have beards? Even though there were some of those, like they were like really well thought out, like bulleted paragraph long, like issue by issue, like essays almost that you could see like junior people, and they weren't all junior. I mean, there's a lot of chiefs in there and all kinds of officers, whatever. But I don't think they were ready for just the content, like quality and quantity that they got. I think they just got overwhelmed in the moment, and a lot of people got pissed off because they weren't getting answers. And it's like, yeah, but like no one could answer like the amount of stuff that they were inundated with, especially when that dude probably types like this. But like even the PAO guy, like it's like if you want the MCPON and the MCPON staff that's capable of answering the questions, like the EA guy and whoever else he has in his orbit, it's like an MC3 can't answer your question on pay issues and all that other stuff. But so it's like they have to process all that, and there were some very specific issues where like somebody needed to like call a command and regulate, you know, and it was like, and they did that too. And there was some where they followed up on threads and said like, you know, like we've engaged with your, you know, ISIC CMC and it's, you know, getting worked on or whatever.
Well,
so
that's
kind of
I
like
can
a
see how that works.
Slower, less agile Joanne Bass approach, you know, like they're just not as savvy on like how all this stuff works, I don't think, but they're trying,
I think
which is
some of it has got to be that generational technology communication delivery difference, but some of it, I think, I went to when it was Admiral Richardson was the CNO and Russ Smith, they came out and did a talk for the area. And, you know, at the end, they opened up to questions. And I don't remember what they talked about beforehand, but the questions they get are so different. And then at his level, right, you're thinking of like the just complete different communities that are involved with each one of them. Like one sailor was like, hey, the backlog at the CDC is taking so long that it's prohibitive
like
for me to get in and like
know what's going
on.
And
I need my kids to go to the CDC so my spouse can work.
Right,
so like how, because we need money because nobody gets paid enough. And
that was a lot
of California and
a lot of
so it's like, I don't expect him to know.
Right. A lot of questions that he got asked weren't even like, it was like Russ Smith when he went to GW. He was getting asked questions that were like 17 CMCs below him. He couldn't possibly have awareness on it. And it's not his job to fix anyway. All he's going to go do is smack some dude's hand and be like, hey, go fix this. Because that could have got handled inside of the strike group. They had the power to fix everything that was going on there. They just didn't. And so somebody had to, you know, like intervene on the ship's behalf. But it's just like, when you ask him a question like that and he's trying to answer you with like this strategic, like 50,000 foot view of things, it's like, dude, I don't know what's going on at your CDC, but I'll go find the person that does and like smack them around and get them to like take action. But like, he can't answer those with the type of answer that's going to satisfy that audience when he's the MCPON. No. Like he's testifying before Congress to get funding for 150 CDCs, not trying to figure out why your one CDC has a backlog of like
to your point, that's
months or something. Yeah.
That's the wrong person to ask that question to.
Right.
You're shooting too high for some granular data that you need.
And maybe that's what maybe that's what they need to do. Maybe they need to, that PAO needs to, it's a lot. It's going to be a lot of data dump, but how do we, you know, push that to like where it needs to go.
So what you're saying is,
and then have something that the MCPON, you know, maybe we put them on Instagram or maybe you put them on Facebook and you're like, you know, have your Reddit groups like, hey, listen to this thing where I'm going to talk, right? I'm going to do something a Gen X guy does who talks on a,
and Scotty Kokorzik, man, like he does that Fridays with the fleet. And I'm like, see, how hard was that? How hard was that? And it gets great responses from people.
But then he can go down the line like, hey, I've, you know, your CDC issue. I turned that over to the guy that's, you know, in CNIC. The CNIC CMC has taken that for action, and you'll hear a report back on.
So what you're saying is I need to set up and start running the Group 9 AMA for this area.
Yes.
I'll be the keyboard warrior for the Group 9 AMA.
Yes. Well, that, and I want to do the YouTube thing too, man. The like, CMC answers questions thing.
I'm down. Like, I'd be interested. It'd be kind of cool to do like a local AOR, you know.
I think it would be to this point, right? Along the same vein, it would be more beneficial to the people in this area, right? As opposed to somebody shooting straight to the top for the MCPON who's going to go, I don't know, let me call 4 people. You would have a better answer, or at least know what they're when they say, hey man, what's the story with Inside Out Cafe? You could be like, well, okay, I know what you're talking about.
He could also go, hey, CMC, whatever. What's this deal with In and Out? You know what I mean? Because like he's the guy when it comes to like submarine regionally. Like that's Aaron's when he checks in, he's going to be the guy. So it's like, he can also like a lot more quickly, like talk to the person who's actually in charge and get results.
See? So, I'm just full of ideas back here, man.
I know.
That's 2 bangers I got.
Are you writing these down, Bob? Jesus.
This has got the podcast name.
This is what I
got. Bob. I was gonna do Ask the Chief and then put the little like insert more, and I was gonna put Command Master on top. like oops, I forgot some words thing. I still might do that, but it's probably gonna be Big Brain Bob.
Big Brain Bob is the way to go.
I'm just the idea man. That's what I did. That's what I did at sub school. I'd sit around in these meetings and go, you know what?
Yeah, I know. Then now you're his stepchild, and so like it's. But I really think stuff like that could be great because they even like getting to see. So Gabe Miller, another dude that is like a mentor of mine. I think he's an amazing.
Never heard of him,
but like, yeah, you have. He's a fucking liar. But I love that dude to death. But when he was the Group 9 CMC, I got to see a lot of what he was doing, and I got to like sit in his office. Like I'd go in there probably once a week, and as long as he was in the area and I was in the area, and like at the end of the day, we just sit there and shoot for like 2 hours, and he would just download all this crap. It was interesting to me because like he was doing way more than I think. Like he had a different approach, I think, than a lot of people probably do. Like you'll probably be very similar in your approach, except you're way more chill. But he was very involved and action oriented and wanted everybody to succeed and would be the one out there like getting after it and getting results. But like if you didn't talk to him, you wouldn't know it. You know what I mean? Like unless you know him and you got to see what I got to see, it's like you wouldn't know he was doing all the things that he was doing. And so like I think there's something to be said for that level of transparency and just like awareness. Like if junior sailors know that you're doing all those things and that you're willing to answer those questions, instead of being like afraid of Gabe Miller, which most people were because he looks like a freaking silverback gorilla that got shaved and he's just like got that look on his face, you know, he's a really intimidating dude. But like he like when you actually talk to him though, like he was incredible, but he was an intimidating figure. Like if he walked in the room right now, I'd still be intimidated by him, and he can't even like do anything. You know what I mean? Like he was always like cool, always looking out for me, but like he's just an intimidating dude. But I feel like if there was an awareness, it's like especially because Aaron's so chill, it's like if he did stuff like that and there's this awareness that he cares, that he's willing to answer the questions, it's like instead of being like, oh my God, it's the Group 9 CMC, they're going to come up and ask you a question. You know what I mean? They're going to be like, oh, this is the dude that does the videos that, you know what I mean? And like is willing to actually talk about it. Like I feel like Takorza could be like that. Like if people are aware of his podcast, like I think a first class listening to that saw him walking across base would be like, oh, I can go ask him a question and he'll actually answer me. And it's like, I don't know that many people have that when they see somebody walking around with a cookie on, period, let alone like a fleet or a force or like a flag CMC.
It's also hard too with that specific example. If you walked across the room, because I'm really bad with who is who sometimes. So like if he was walking across base, I wouldn't necessarily recognize him. He'd just be a dude with a cookie.
That's true. He's just a CMC.
You have to be 4 inches from his face to read the tiniest stitching that says whether it's fleet, force, command, whatever, right? And then it's fair. It's command, but like which command? That doesn't necessarily. There's a big difference between all of those. Right?
If
it's not like an admiral
on YouTube, though, they know exactly who he is too. So
right. That's a hard spot with like CMC stuff. Is you just see like a cookie and you're like, okay, whatever. It's
and honestly, like
that dude's just way older.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, he just called you old, bro. Like in a lot of ways,
I'm sitting right here.
I can hear you. Like he, in a lot of ways, I feel like it almost doesn't matter too, because like they just need to know that he's the like regional. They don't even need to know that he's at Group 9. You know what I mean? Like they just need to know that he's like a high level CMC in the area, and it's like, I feel like it would that type of like awareness and visibility, where they're getting communication from you, even if it's one way, will also open up their willingness. Because like you probably, if you then had a regional all hands call with all the submarine, it's like they're going to probably be a lot more willing to engage with you than they would be with some nameless, faceless Group 9 CMC. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think it's a great idea all around, and we should make YouTube content until you get in trouble.
I'm here for it. Not the getting in trouble part. I know.
I think I'll be okay.
I don't want you to get in trouble, but like I'm just saying, I think I might be blacklisted by some people. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I'm here for it.
I think I might be. I'm not positive, but then McPond definitely untagged me in some stuff. So I'm just like, I don't know, like maybe.
Well,
maybe I'm on a blacklist.
Maybe due to recent outbursts.
Maybe. But no, this was before that. He untagged me in the AMA response. But.
Yeah. Oh, I think you talked about that before.
Yeah, I got some tea on him too, but I won't say anything.
Jesus.
Out of respect.
You're just out here burning every bridge you cross.
I did say what when I did that last
I'm retired.
I thought you wanted people to come to the podcast.
But also I want institutional change, and I might have to go scorched earth because nothing else is working. That's all I'm saying. Like that usually
I don't know. Like
historically, the scorched earth has always worked for people at some point.
But I don't know. I mean, like I feel like the stuff that your conviction is about is happening. It's just not happening at the speed I think that all of us want. And I don't think it can. I just don't think it can.
You're not wrong. Yeah. The institution can't change as fast as we would like it to, just because it's size and structure.
We used to do for enlisted leadership development, we do the DISC project. It's basically like it's like Myers-Briggs, but like really, really truncated. Like we're not spending thousands of dollars for every single sailor to figure out that they're a ETNFJ or whatever the letters are.
Something. I have mine in the drawer still.
Right, but it's very similar, right? So it's those 4 letters of DISC can tell someone, hey, this is how I am, and this is kind of why I don't get along with this other person. Who's this other letter, right? And we can offline talk about what each one means. But the funny part is, so that sailor goes, and we tell the sailors this. We're like, hey, don't go back to your chief and be like, I'm a D, I'm an I, I'm an S, I'm a C. I'm like, right? Because they're like, I don't give a shit. Like, go work. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what that means. But that's the kind of stuff that, you don't know what you don't know. And there's like a skew in Back to the Future where we're going to have all these sailors that know all this cool stuff and leadership and development. And you're going to have a bunch of guys that have only been to SCA.
Yeah.
And at some point, those are going to come together, which is going to be great. Yeah, it's just going to take some time.
Yeah.
And it might.
That's I was talking to somebody the other day about enforcing the mission, vision, guiding principles, because we were having this conversation about like why I think the creed isn't enough and definitely shouldn't be the source document for things like teaching the creed and other stuff. But like, we were talking about like, okay, like, cause they were talking about, all these programs that are coming down the pipe and like all these new ideas that we have. And it's like, yeah, but we also have existing tools that aren't being used. Like, again, going back to my reference of like, I bet you. And I challenge the two of you, since you have ready and way more ready access to chiefs than I do, is like, start asking people and let me know, let me know what they say about like what it's like right now, like what list the mission, vision, guiding
principles. You can't task me anymore.
I know, that's my point, is the two of you can get people to do it. It's like, list them for me. Just, I don't need the details. I don't need an explanation. Just like, what are the mission, vision, and guiding principles? Like, what does your eval say? Like, what's every block of a chief eval? Go. And I bet you there's a bunch of chiefs that couldn't tell you. And so like that's a problem. And so I was like, look, like we don't have to reinvent the wheel, because they were talking about like, oh, like what would you do? Would you like write these job descriptions or rewrite the creed? Or I'm like, yeah, you can do all those things. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm not even saying we shouldn't update or revise or whatever the mission, vision, guiding principles if we think we need to. But what I'm saying is like the mission, vision, and guiding principles have been around almost as long as I was. And it's like, if chiefs can't even recite them, then we're clearly not leveraging them, like using them as a teaching tool and leveraging them in the way that we should. And like, they're definitely not dictating the identity of the chief's mess. Like, in my opinion and analysis, is like, I don't think that, because like, how could they, if they're not even largely aware of them until they look at like 4 chief evals and are finally like, okay, I think I got this, like, it doesn't make any sense to me that we're teaching off of this vague subjective document that may or may not define the identity of a chief, which I contend that it does not. But like the mission, vision, guiding principles, like how often do you even hear that talked about during the chief season? Like how many chiefs are getting, how many new chiefs, like chief selectees during the chief season, are getting sat down and trained on the content of a chief eval? Because I can't tell you the number of times that I sat down with a new chief within the first like 2 years, like up to, I can recall a chief up to 2 years removed from pinning that had to ask me like, can you go over the chief eval with me? Because nobody's ever like done that. And I don't really understand why it's different and how it's different and what I should be doing differently when preparing it and blah, blah, blah. And so like that, like blew like continually blew my mind. So I'm just like, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Like I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit. I was going down.
Well, so that, I mean, that is in teaching, that is in teaching to the creed now and I know that stuff? The MCPON, yeah. Okay. It talks about each,
Good.
each section. And then I know that the new MCPON is updating the mission, vision, guiding principles. So it should be talked about more. It's a lot shorter and easier to manage, I think. Now, I don't know how that's going to affect the chief eval or future teaching, whatever that's going to be called. I don't know any of that. I do know that, he has his own priorities, which guess what? Line up with the CNO's priorities, checks. Yeah. And then he has, mission, vision, guiding principles, which also line up with those priorities, which I think is important. But how that will, I think you're right on the fact that if you just asked a bunch of random chiefs, could they name all of them? Maybe not. But I think they could definitely kind of talk about what they are or what they think they are. Whether it be, hey, I'm supposed to be, the SME or whatever, whatever those things are. I don't know that they are just going to go like bow, 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 bow. And they came from this guy, we're going to go back with history from the original, because it hasn't changed since
Campo. Yeah.
Campo. Yeah. I mean, like that was the thing for a while until recently, till MCPON 16.
I don't even care like what I care what they are, but you know what I mean? Like, okay, like Honey revises them. Cool. I think that chief should be like, I think it should be like the Sailor's Creed or like the core values. Like if you're a chief, I think you should be able to like, oh, you're the subject matter expert on your career field, but not about like being like, you should know this. And I like the one of the biggest problems with the current creed is that it's too long. Like, it's like, nobody's going to memorize a 506 word document. Like but the Sailor's Creed is like probably 50 words. I don't know. Like I only know this creed is 506 words because I actually checked the other day because I was writing something and I'm a nerd.
So Sailor's Creed's always a hard one for me because Sailor's Creed to me is like what I need a civilian to figure out as an enlisted person. Now I got it. We use it. And I got honor, courage, commitment's important. But if you listen to it or really, really read it, to me, it's all about I.
Yeah, right. Which it's different for a chief. I think it should be. And so why don't? But whatever.
Yep. And so why don't we look at Navy ethos? Because Navy ethos talks about the we's and togetherness and all the things that I think are still important now. And I don't even. I'll be honest. Like, punch me. I'm a chief, and I don't know when the Navy ethos came out, but I think it does talk about.
4, I think.
Because even the Sailor's Creed's not super old.
It's like early 90s.
Yeah. Well, I want to say it's like it happened right after, like they were trying to basically right after a bunch of stuff happened.
Yeah, we switched to
got rid of drugs
and
we got rid of drugs
and something.
I
remember reading about it, but I don't remember the details.
Again, shame on me for not knowing. But what I listen to it, what I do listen to is
I'm gonna bet 92.
Big brain bomb.
But are we betting 92? Let's go full Google.
Jamie, look it up. Google. Pull it up, Jamie.
We don't have a young Jamie. We have an old DGUTS, and he's gonna duck go it really quick.
But yeah, it talks about things that I want a brand new sailor to understand.
Yeah. Talking about the ethos.
No, I'm talking about the
Sailor's Creed.
Sailor's Creed.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. But the ethos talks a little more about the we's and things I want a chief or even a sailor that's just had some time, like been in for a
1986 It is according to Wikipedia, though, so it might be wrong.
That's close enough.
The first version of the creed came from an idea the idea was in 1986 by Admiral James D. Watkins, CNO, to form a group that would create a code of ethics for the Navy.
Chance.
Naval War College, blah, blah, blah. Sailor's Creed, the original
Waiting
text.
for him to hit formalized in.
Nah, it doesn't say. It just said the only date Wikipedia gives me is 86. So let me see. History and Heritage Command's got a link to. Maybe it'll tell me.
So
you might win, Bob. Hang on. It says I saw 1993, but I don't know.
Oh,
okay,
man.
I think it was in the 90s.
The Sailor's Creed was written by a Blue Ribbon recruit training panel in 1993 at the direction of CMO Admiral Kelso. Yeah,
1 year off.
Real close.
So close.
Yeah,
I didn't go over those, so I still have a chance at winning the final showcase.
I feel like it's notable that like it took 7 years from good idea fairy moment to implementation of a 3-paragraph long short document that we all remember.
I want to say there's some history where they weren't sure on honor, courage, and commitment. Like they were changing that stuff for a long time.
They've talked about changing it recently, and the Marine Corps is like, nah.
Yep.
So like, they're always talking about changing stuff that doesn't need changing.
That's a standard sailor of the whatever board question though too, right? If you could add a fourth, what would it be? A fourth core value, what would it be?
I mean, but like I said, at the end of, like, I get it that it's important. Like I get that we tell some of our senior sailors to say it, sail of the year, sail of the quarter, just like Bob was saying. But to me, that is just reading it tells me like, hey, this is a guy that I want to help understand what the Navy's all about. And this is what because we got so many different, people come from different backgrounds, different areas. We got to get them kind of honed in on what we as the Navy folk believe in. Right. And that can do it. Now from there, we talk about wanting and feeding our middle-aged sailors, E5 to E6, right? We want them to like start thinking bigger and loftier thoughts. Let's get them to work on the ethos or work on,
right.
And I got it. Chief's Creed.
Hot
garbage.
It's fine. I'll say
the quiet
part out loud.
It exists.
I like it.
I can't get in trouble.
I do. I do like it, but I do like it because it does spell out some things. I think you're right on the fact that, someone somewhere had a really good pinning ceremony,
pinning script,
and someone was like crushed it, right? Like, got it. This is
hey, we need a CPO Creed. Oh, check this out. I wrote this.
Dude, go talk to Jeff. His last year was amazing.
But it also, I do appreciate things like, hey, at some point, like as a chief petty officer, you are going to do some stuff that there's no way in the history of ever someone is going to be like, oh yeah, there's an instruction for that when it's like, some, random. And so I do appreciate what is said by it. No one's ever going to, I say no one, but you get those guys that memorize like all kinds of things on the interwebs. And so I'm not going to say never, but what I will say is that it's not going to be every day. Everybody is not going to remember it.
Right.
It sounds like like a parallel would be, so when I played around with the Army for a few months, right? It was really poorly done, but it was interesting where they tried to do this like meet and greet because we had about a dozen Army civil affairs folks that were in our group. And then the other 30 of us or so were Navy, mix of all communities, active and reserve, right? So it was like, hey, let's kind of figure out what
I'm lowering my
where we're all coming from, right? So the Navy all stood up, we did the Sailor's Creed, sure, cool. And then afterwards I don't remember if they did an Army Creed, if they have something similar. I don't remember that.
They have like
but I specifically remember them saying
equivalent. I forget what it's called.
But I specifically remember them saying who is willing to do the NCO Creed, right? And this random set, like E5 from the Army stands up, and they pulled it up on screen, right, on big projector, And this dude just rattled off the whole thing straight from memory. Real, just the same way we would do Sailor's Creed at any board, right? He just went for it. And then they pulled up and they're like, how about the Petty Officer's Creed? Who wants to read that? And we all just kind of looked at each other like,
there's a Petty Officer's Creed?
Literally, that somebody said that. There was a lot of like, oh, okay. And so somebody's standing and you can see like the squinting, trying to read it off the projector while they're going through it, right? But like, and so, and it was like, I didn't know that this existed. This is the first time I've ever heard this.
Yeah.
But so it sounds like it would be something similar where like you just have an appropriate, whether it's a creed, whatever document it is, right? There's something you memorize based kind of on that, like where you're at in your career. So like to your point, Aaron, like you come in, you got the Sailor's Creed, crush it, cool, you move on. But somewhere around like the 3rd to 2nd class, you should probably be looking more lofty than that. Right, and there's a different creed, whether or not it's the generic like Petty Officer's Creed that we already have that nobody knows about apparently.
Right.
Or maybe just me.
I didn't even know. Nobody. I'm about to look this up really quick.
I know. I was about to. I was like, Petty Officer's Creed.
I'm just dominating back here.
I know.
I'm Jeopardy champ.
Creed.
But
I will neither fear nor shun responsibility, and I am always responsible for my actions. I'm always fair and impartial when dealing with my sailors, remembering not to accept full credit for a job well done without proper recognition of my sailors first. Is that the whole thing?
So to your point, there's more E45. No, I feel like it's pretty long, but so that would be more of an E45, but it's still focused on the I, but it's a little bit different goals, right? But then like the E6 and above kind of range, you start focusing on whether that's when you start paying attention to the Chief's Creed or mission, vision, guiding principles, or whatever you want to call it, right? That's when you start. That's the thing that you're asking about it. Like a Sailor of the Year board is like, hey, I don't need you to tell me the Sailor's Creed. Tell me about this thing that is probably more applicable to your position in the world.
I don't think this is real.
It's long.
I think that,
I remember. All I remember is that it's long.
I don't think it's real in that, like, I think somebody just made this up because they're like supermoto or something. Like this isn't, it's not appearing on like anything official. You know what I mean? Like I searched Petty Officer's Creed, and the only thing it appears on like for a website besides just images of it is some random WordPress site. But then like the next one is Navy.mil. It's a history and heritage command, but it's the Chief Petty Officer's Creed. And then you got like Goat Locker, DOD, and it's all just other creeds. So like, I don't know that
this you're getting algorithmed.
Official.
I bet you
I'm on
DuckDuckGo,
somewhere. Dude. I'm not even on Google.
It don't matter. Google's the one that you're searching through them.
I don't think it's real, dude. I am on Google. I'm lying because I have to use Chrome for.
I'm just saying, like, I bet you it exists somewhere to some extent, or it did, and it's now no longer official. But to kind of his point, like maybe it should be a tiered approach.
I also don't know. I mean, I don't think that. Do we really need to is that the things we need to care about right now? Like,
that's what we got to focus on.
Let's focus on, make sure we get a E4 creed. Like,
memorize this
E5.
I do think a redefining of the Chief Petty Officer identity is necessary only because I don't think the Gen Pop really understands what a chief is supposed to be. Like, I think that they're like pretending and like conforming to what's going on around them, which is a group of people who also don't really know what it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's why you get, like, I've talked to high level CMCs that are disgusted by the like bumper sticker culture and like the t-shirts and all that crap. But then it begs the question, well, why aren't the Gen Pop Chiefs Mess folks also like going away from that or striving towards something that aligns with whatever you're thinking at the high level CMC position? So it's like there's clearly a disconnect between what they think a chief petty officer and what they think the mess is and what they think our mission is and the people that are out there actually doing it every day. So like, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the creed. I'm just saying that if we're going to model how we build new chiefs on the creed, then we need a new creed, because that one's not going to do the trick because it's a pinning script. Like, I think you could release the creed with an instruction that has like a pinning script template that we standardize using the existing creed largely. I think there's some stuff that needs to go away, but like so that you maintain some of the tradition that people will inevitably throw a temper tantrum over. But I just,
then
I don't
Paul's got to write a new book.
Paul doesn't work there no more. It'd be somebody else. So,
I mean, somebody's got to write a new book. I see his name all over the exchange every time I go.
It doesn't matter. That's not who,
I'll have AI write
like how many people have read the Chief Petty Officer Handbook? I have both of them, by the way, but like, I'm just saying, like, how many people have gone through that book?
Yeah, no, I just remember sitting in Groton and flipping open an old one, the version before Paul's. Yeah. And in the first couple of pages, it talks about like contributing authors, right? Yeah. And one of the guys on there, you're like, that's N1. Let's just go. Or like, he wasn't N1, but he was like in our building. And you're like, you go down there and you're like, I know that you were retired Navy, but like, is that you? Like, are you the same guy? And he's probably. Like, yeah, that was me. And you're like, oh, so you're like a thing, right? Like you helped write this book on how to train all chiefs. Yeah. And you're just down here running like facilities.
I almost got to rewrite a 3rd edition with Paul, and then he left that job, and I was like, God damn it. It would have been really cool. Even if like there's probably only like 100 people buying that book. I just thought it was cool. Like, I'm like, that'd be super fun. But yeah, we didn't
see it could have been your name on page 3.
Could have been, but it wasn't. So bummer. It would have been my claim to fame forever. Yeah. What haven't we talked about? Let's do something. Go ahead, Bob.
I don't remember what I was going to say now.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Your big brain is stroking out.
No, it's been a long weekend.
I can't call it Big Brain Bob if you can.
I had a 7-year-old birthday party. My 7-year-old now birthday party.
This is just, you can't act like that's park. Unique. Because your life is on fire every day. So it's like, you don't get to like, oh, I had a really hard day. Like, nope. Your whole life's a dumpster fire, bro. I've been there.
Right now it's 2-0. I'm up on your ideas. What time did you wake up today?
I had my whole head and neck cooked by radiation though. So it's different. I woke up at like 11, I think 10:30. It was like 10:30.
Yeah. Living his roughest life.
I know. Yeah. It's a hard knock life over here being retired. You know what I'm saying? Unemployed, retired. It's awesome.
You talked about that the other, what did you talk about? Oh man, which I thought was really interesting. I don't remember who it was with or which podcast, but about retiring and how a lot of people are scared of getting out and just not knowing. And usually they can do well.
I always joke that using, fear of the unknown is the Navy's best retention tool. Right. Because so they're like congressionally mandated to send you or give you the opportunity to go through TAPS before you get out. Right.
Yep.
And I remember when I went through CCC school, they made a point of saying like comparing the branches and basically said the Navy was hot garbage at getting people through. And I don't know what time frame that was talking about. Right. Don't know if that's current, whatever.
I had a really great experience.
At some point in time, the Navy was really bad with getting people through TAPS and checking that box. And so that we've made like a concerted push to make sure people go through TAPS. Right. And then I don't remember the time frame of when you're required or when you're supposed to go, but I've heard from everybody that's gone that like you should go at least once, like a year and a half out, once like closer to a year to 9 months.
It's like a year out. It's a year out.
Right. And then, and half of those people still say like, and half of those people still say like, I felt behind the curve, or I immediately had to go do a whole bunch of things to get time done. I don't know. Right. But because I haven't been through it. Right. Cause I'm not getting out. However, I think that portion of it, the biggest thing that at least commonly from everybody has been like, there's so much stuff out there that I didn't realize existed to get out that you don't know until you make the decision. Right. Which would probably help make people feel better about the decision of getting out if that's what they should do, if they knew that those things were there. So like, there's probably some merit to, I heard some, there's some old thing that I had a chief on my first boat that said that everybody should go through TAPS every enlistment. Like you re-enlist, you go to new command, you should go through TAPS just so that you know what's there and you stay current on the world before you make the decision to re-enlist. Before you re-enlist, go through TAPS just so that you understand and you're making an informed decision.
Well,
and I can get behind that. It's just odd.
If you're on
it's
the
kind
fence,
of funny
I
to
guess,
say like
while I was at sub school, I went through TAPS, and one is because I had enough time to do it. And two was I was tired, like 20, because at that time, 23 years in the Navy. And people come to me and they tell me all, hey, I'm getting out. And I just was like, didn't feel like I was equipped to help them through that process because I knew nothing about the process because I've been in. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to go to TAPS. And I didn't really, there was no intention for me to get out. I mean, there was a small, because I didn't know where I was going from there, but but reality is like, you know what, let me go check this out. And I feel like now I am, well prepared when someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to get out, which I mean, if we want to talk about a whole other thing is like, I feel like that's going to be a lot to talk about when now folks here, let's see. So these folks now are just coming through almost the end of their shore duty are the ones that are only BRS. So only blended retirement. Yeah. So, and so, there's going to be,
dude, when they came out with that, I had this immediate reaction, and I'm sure a lot of people did. I'm sure this is an original thought, but I was just like, oh God. I was like, there's going to be this generation of sailors that are all just like, bye. Cause there's no stay till 20, get a pension. So there's no reason to stay in anymore. And so there's going to be this huge exodus and so that was back when it happened. And then now we're already having a huge recruiting and retention issue. And then you're saying now this generation that's all BRS is going to age out and presumably a lot of them are going to run for the hills. Cause what's the incentive to stay now? So I was like, how long until they reinstitute the regular pension system just to keep people in?
I don't know if they'll ever reinstitute that, but I think you just have to.
Saves way too much money for Big Navy.
Because
if you bean counter gets a say at some point everywhere.
I don't disagree, but if you look at how much money the money of the Navy goes to, when you look at it, I don't know, I was at something where I got to see the actual, pie chart of what we spend money on, and the majority is, retired pay and healthcare for those folks, right? And so
life expectancy increases, and so does the Navy's medical bills.
Why wouldn't you, figure out a way? Which and it also, it definitely is closer to what the system is out in the real world. Right. So what you're hoping for now is you're hoping for sailors to stay in because one, they have good leadership, which we talked about before. How do they? We don't know.
Skeptical hippo eyes.
And then two is that, either they're, the reason they joined was to do something bigger than themselves, service, all those things that you hope them to do. And then the third one would be what Bob talked about, which was the fear of, doing something different. Because I would hope that, folks that are in the Navy, at least for the first tour, decide, hey, I'm going to go do my shore duty before they get out so they can see both sides. You would hope. And that's what I'm saying. So those guys that are at BRS, they're in their shore duty right now. And we're going to see what is that zone B?
Know, man.
What the zone B or zone C.
I think you're going to see a whole group of people vote with their feet in it's not going to be a win for the Navy just because I think back to at the end of my first boat, I couldn't have been a bigger caricature of the bitter, jaded second class that's eligible. I hated the Navy. And the only reason I re-enlisted was I was sitting there thinking about the prospect of moving back in with my parents when I separated from the Navy. And I'm like, yep, can't do that. I'm just not willing to accept that. I love my parents, but I'm just I'm not doing that. So, and the other reason was, and if the post 9/11 GI Bill had existed when I was at that decision point, I would have ran for the hills, 100% chance, because like I didn't want to move in with my parents, but like if I had the post 9/11 GI Bill, I could have went to school and like paid for housing and everything. Like I could have just went to college, which is what I did on shore duty. I got my culinary degree when I was in Groton at Johnson Wales in Providence, Rhode Island. And it's like, I was looking at it like the Montgomery GI Bill, even I did that stupid kicker thing too. It's like, it was like 25 grand and some change. I'm like, my culinary associate's degree, because Johnson Wales is like a prestigious culinary school. My associate's degree was 30 grand. Like I can't, like, what am I going to do with 25 grand? So I was just like, you know what? I'll go to shore duty. I'll get paid as an E5. I'll have health insurance and BAH and everything. And I'll use tuition assistance and top up, and then I won't have any debt. Right. But if post 9/11 GI Bill existed, which it does now, and they don't have the prospect of like sticking it out for 20, dude, like I don't see how any of these kids are going to stick around, man. Like, yes, there's always like a certain percentage, but I think it's going to be such a giant exodus.
That's the difference though, right? It's the same thing every time you leave a command, right? Because you leave as you're the senior, whatever rank, you know the most, you're the most confident person, right? You could dominate that command, whatever rank you're at, doing your job. And then it's like, hey, you're going to go to shore duty. And it's like the promised land. You don't get underway. You're not standing duty every 3 to 4 days, whatever, right? Like for me as a radio man, I don't have to deal with missile techs anymore at shore duty. Like, this sounds amazing. I'm going to go do that, right? Yeah. But there's still that fear of like, cool, I'm going to show up and immediately be the most junior person who has no idea what shore duty is like, what sub school is like outside of being a student there. So there's still that fear of the unknown, even staying within the Navy, right? But then add in to your guys' point, I had that like, well, I'm like at least chipping away at that 20 years until I can get my retirement.
Right.
I didn't think of it that way at all at the time. I lined up everything. So my PRD and EAOS lined up with the end of shore duty.
Yeah,
I was going to go take
my sub pay. I did all the things.
I did the same thing. Gave up shore duty. Gave up sub pay, and I went. I will take my bonus, and I'll take a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday at a schoolhouse that gets snow days, and I will go home at the end of this, and I will be happy with my time. I can put something on a resume, right? And I changed my mind, like a lot of people do, but because I want to know what the percentage of people that have been in over 20 that joined knowing I want to do over 20. I'd bet you.
I don't think there's that many.
Well over 50% joined the Navy going, I'm doing my 4 and I'm going to GTFO. Yeah. And then they went, I kind of like this, or I got used to this. And then I kind of like this. And then now they're here for like 6 years going,
job hunting,
I can stick around.
I was like an 11.5 year chief leaving Carter, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. There's no way I can go back to another side. Like I was going to get out at 11.5 years as a chief.
Yeah. But to your point though, right? Like with the BRS versus the Montgomery 9/11, right? If I would have gotten out at the end of shore duty, I'd have gotten a high five and a couple of bullet points on a resume and maybe an in with an interview somewhere. Whereas with BRS, they're still going to get something out of that,
right?
That they can take with them
to get out of the Navy. Like in my mind,
it does. It's not necessarily an incentive to get out. I'm saying like if my choice is shore duty or a civilian company that's doing, say, working in the same genre, the same field, right? I could go work for some contractor doing EW stuff, playing with. I don't know, whatever EW, right? I could go get a job there. And then I'm debating like, okay, do I take my time of pot committed towards doing this and I enjoy the Navy or I don't or whatever, or do I take just the straight cash and somebody not necessarily having any investment in me? Every company's different, right? But like you could go with, I'll take the straight cash, or I could take the investment side of it with the Navy and stuff that I know. But when you're an E5, 100% I take the cash 10 times also, out of 10 at the time. If I had that option.
Yeah, whether it's a fair analysis from their perspective or not, like whether you agree with it or not, like which I think there's problems. But like I think most of the people in those positions that are at that decision point their analysis of naval leadership is that it's hot garbage and that there is no investment in them and they don't care about them and that they're just consumables to be used up and whatever just to get the mission done and put some eval fit rep on the bullet, like a bullet.
You don't lift with your knees.
The leader that is doing a horrific job. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of that analysis is based on, like my post naval life of being immersed in the interwebs. So it's like that. I'm sure that's not representative of everyone, but I don't know, man. Like, I think like it's like this, it feels like a perfect storm to me. Like you have all these reasons to get out and really not many to stay unless you fall into that category of I'm here to do something bigger than myself and be a part of, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just don't know. And even that, man, like I've had conversations with even like chiefs nowadays that it's like because of the manning and retention issues and because of just circumstances that exist on submarines and ships and whatever, it's like, everybody's job is exponentially more difficult and more stressful. And like, I got chiefs telling me they want to get out because they just can't do this anymore. And I'm like,
well, that's a self-licking ice cream cone.
What do you mean?
People get out because people are getting out because it's hard and there's a lot of extra stuff pushed on you. So you go, man, this sucks. A lot more is expected of me than what should be. And this is hard because people are getting out. So I'm just going to get out. And then the next person, it just slowly amps up. And the next person just wants to get out because everybody else before them just got out.
Well, what I'm saying though is like the perfect storm part of it is like if I have chiefs that are so burnt out and stressed out and frustrated and that they're shutting down and they have the historical context to go back when manning wasn't quite as horrific. I mean, it's never. That's not true though. It's ever been great.
That's objectively not true. In the article that I read to you from 1948, you had dudes that were trying to get out.
But
because there was too much manning.
How many times in the last 20 years have you seen the Navy giving out 6-figure enlistment bonuses if you have a heartbeat? Like, so it has to be worse. Whether
I'm just saying
in literal numbers that we can look at or in their projections in Millington or whatever.
I'm just saying that it's not new.
It's not a new problem. I'm saying it's a lot worse now than it probably ever has been.
Maybe. I would say that it feels worse.
It has to be. It has to be. Like, why would they be cutting these checks? It has to be, dude. Like, it has to be. They're lowering the PRT standards. They're like waiving ASVAB score requirements. They're doing everything. They like, this feels like full on panic to me, but open to more information from the audience here. I don't know.
I mean, yes, they did not, did they meet numbers? No, they used up during COVID, they used a big majority of the debt pool to keep people in.
Yeah.
And, but I think if you're looking at the submarine force, if you really, really, really dig into the numbers, a lot of it has to do to me with, it's not so much the recruiting, it's the retention or it's the attrition. Right. And those are things we need to work on.
Yeah.
And I know you talk about this all the time. I always, I listen to the podcast for a hot minute and usually most times I'm always in agreement with, what you're talking about as far as like, just, taking care of these sailors, getting them, to where they need to be the best they can be, get all the resources they can use. And we owe that to them. So my thought is that, that's the part where I want to work out is how do I,
that's
how do
the
I
best retention tool I've ever,
fix retention and fix attrition. Yeah. Retention and attrition to me are the two. It's not so much of, recruiting will figure it out. Like recruiting, whether it's give them all the monies or, do all the things, they're going to figure out ways. And then and there's ebbs and flows to all that crap. Like, like I think when we're, like I said, I think we both came in with this kicker, the college fund, GI Bill with college fund. I have no idea what that
it was called
means.
Navy College Fund or some crap, but like, I'm like, what? Like,
it was just a kicker. Well, the funny part is like, I don't even know, like, so I shifted to post 9/11 so my daughter could use post on because she goes to Arizona State.
So when she expends it completely, they will supposedly include that $1,800 in the last payment. You'll get it back at the very bitter end of you exhausting the benefits.
That is what I've heard, and I've
just their way of saving money, because
I have rolled through.
People won't.
Not that I'm good at Reddit, but I have like rolled through the Reddit things to figure out like what is this kicker thing and where does it go? Yeah. And so I have heard that
$1,800 back at
it comes later. But
which it's like, will you even expend it all the way? Like maybe, but like you have to exhaust your benefits and like
who knows?
Like for me, when I started my psychology stuff, which I'm starting again on like the 20th. I'm using VR&E because I have a VA rating, and so it's like a second GI Bill. So it's like I do plan on pursuing a doctorate degree, but like I don't know that I'll even because the benefits for VR&E are so nuts. It's like I don't know that I'll ever get to the end of my GI Bill anyway. Wow. So like you're probably never going to see that money regardless. So
that's wild. Yeah. So anyway, like I said, I think those are the things that we can attack that are in the military, right? Like I'll let the folks at, NETSI and RTC figure out how to put people in the Navy. I'm going to figure out how to keep them in the Navy.
Yeah. And that like, to me, that creating the sense of belonging is the most important part. It's like, if our leadership is like using all the tools to figure out a way to make those people feel like you care about them and that they can trust you and that you have their best interest at heart and all the things. It's like, that's what, like, whether or not you could come up with a way to objectively measure like whether or not a person is doing leadership correctly. It's like, what I can tell you is if that sailor doesn't feel that way, like whether it's like true or not, I think a lot of people get caught up in like juniors. They like dismiss a lot of junior sailor input based on, junior sailor, they're going to complain no matter what. And it's like, not really, like not like, yeah, there are things they will complain about, but it won't be you if you do this correctly, and it's like, if you can make them like create a sense of belonging and a value to the organization and that they're doing something important. Like, because you can, if they don't have it coming in, which I think everybody has it to a degree, and then it probably either gets buried or like destroyed by the organization, but that desire to be a part of something bigger than themselves and contribute to like this idea of the nation's defense or whatever. It's like, you can create and cultivate a sense of belonging to the organization and like a sense of importance and that you're part of the process and you're contributing valuably to this team, whether we're talking about like the organization wholly or just like your work center or whatever the team definition is. That I think is like the most valuable retention tool that we have. I just think that most people don't know how to do it. It's like they don't have the tools yet. And I think the NLEC and stuff like that could teach those things. But yeah, man,
I think. Oh, here we go.
Big Brain Bob coming in from the top rope.
I think that a lot of that sense of purpose and belonging comes from mission satisfaction. And so it's a peacetime Navy issue, right? Where a lot of people are doing a lot of things where they're kind of like, why are we doing this? Right. Now, all of us have been on BNs, right? Mm-hmm. None of us have launched a nuclear missile in our lifetime.
Right.
And so a lot of people are like, why are we getting into it? Right. And I get that's not the point. I get all that stuff. Right. But to the E2 that's coming in is like, we're not going to go destroy half the planet right now with these missiles. So like, what am I doing? Right. As opposed to, I bet you if you ask somebody from any of the special warfare communities, any of a lot of these other communities that are the high speed, they see a tangible, direct, daily. It is. But I'm not saying we need to start a war. I'm just saying that make this useful. But what I'm saying is that
said that.
I mean, you did.
We need
just
a good war. You did. Yeah. You do say that sometimes. But like,
sarcastically,
I think that's a leadership thing. Like, you've got to explain to your sailors why you are doing what you're doing
for sure.
I got it. We're not on the front lines. Like, hey, bro, sorry, SSBNs. We're just here because, but like at the end of the day, like you got to say, this is the most important mission. Like If you don't think deterrence is a big deal, then you need to, chiefs need to figure out like,
I totally agree. But what I mean is
by having conviction and like, dude, if you had seen, we went out and did an inspection on the Alabama. TR Glazner was a Cobb, and god damn, that boat was hot. Like, I've never seen a culture on a submarine like that except for the Jimmy Carter. And he created that on a BN. He did that. I don't think that was anybody. Like, obviously people contributed, but like that TR was the heart and soul of that culture. And it's the leader can create that no matter what. I could create that at a movie theater if you put me, you know what I mean? Like, so does it help? Yeah, it makes it a hell of a lot easier when you're on a platform like the Carter, to where I don't have to sell them on how important the mission is, because they just know inherently. Like, you don't got to explain how important the mission SEALs are doing. It is, unless what they're doing is some deployment to the Philippines in the middle of like right after 9/11, and they want to go get after it in Afghanistan. You know what I mean? So like, no matter where you are, you're going to have to explain it at some point. You're going to have to sell them.
I agree. I
like,
just mean,
we still got to go do this thing,
to the grand idea of staying Navy, and feeling like you were a part of Navy and doing that piece, right? It is easier if there is a bigger thing that you can explain, right? Because you take away, you don't need this boat to be hyped, because you just turn on the news and you can see something wild that's going on that you're like, I'm helping that, or I'm working on this, or when you're going underway, you're going to go do it to accomplish X mission, right?
Right.
And so that part of it takes all of that out of the hands and makes it a much larger picture of, this is why what we are doing is important. I'm not saying that it's not possible at a lower scale. Yeah. I'm not saying that they should try at a lower scale.
Right now, I'm just saying point at the television and be like, there's rampant speculation about whether or not Putin's going to use nukes in Ukraine. You know what I mean? And what would happen if that happened, and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, I could point at the news right now and get a BN all gassed up. So it's like, I think it's a lot more dependent on the leader doing what it takes to make that crew feel like they're doing an important mission than it is at like the mission itself being the thing that does it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm with you. It definitely makes it easier. Like, you didn't have to explain to anybody on the Carter that the mission was indeed important.
Right.
And
they did their read-in, they signed their NDA, and they were just
makes it
like,
easier.
Get me underway. I want to go do what I'm supposed to go do.
Yeah.
But it's easier in that aspect. So those people, you probably didn't have to hype up as much about why they should stay in the Navy or why they should stay all that, right?
Well, dude, I'd be curious what attrition on that boat, though, because the first tour sailors, like, think about how much it would suck to have your first submarine be that boat that's at sea 300 days a year. All you ever see is service pier. Like,
I would argue that
it's anything cool except the mission. So
I would argue that it's better and or easier for the first term sailors, because they have zero to compare it to. They don't know any better.
But 80% of my division got out of the Navy. Yeah. Like, I'm telling you, like, attrition was big there.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
I wonder if
first term guys.
I wonder how much it actually does compare to other commands or platforms, or, you know what I mean? Like, did the JC have higher attrition than other places, or did it just feel like it because you were there and it was your division? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd be curious about that.
Numbers. I was the career counselor when I was there for a couple of years, and I don't remember numbers. It felt like people were getting out a lot. Like, I don't know. This was like PTS time frame right around when it converted to Seaway, and they were trying to downsize, and so that was probably part of it too. But yeah, man, I'd honestly have to look up numbers and stuff. Like, I remember it feeling like a lot of the first term sailors were separating. And a lot of it was probably anecdotal to my division too, because like because I wasn't the guy. Like, I was never, and I don't think I need to defend this position because I still believe it, but I was never the guy that was like just trying to keep everybody in the Navy no matter what. I was like, what do you want to do with your life? Okay, let's start working on that goal now. So when it comes time to separate, you're ready, if that's what you decide to do. And if not, it's like I would try to get my people all to be ready to separate, because if you can make the decision to stay Navy when it's not because you have to have a paycheck because you have a kid at home and a bunch of like military star card debt, then you get to make a clean decision instead of like, oh God, I have to stay in because I have no other choice. And so I was always trying to prepare them for that. But also like, I felt like the best way to accomplish retention for me was for them to know, like, if I provide them with quality leadership, which I believe includes like helping them get wherever they want to be. Oh, you want to be a cop when you get out? All right, let's get you ready for that. And then if they change their mind down the road, then they change their mind down the road, and that's fine too. But like, if they feel like they've been provided with quality leadership and that I genuinely care about them, I feel like that's the best way to convince them to stay. And part of that for me was like getting them ready to separate, or like whatever your goal. You want to be an officer, you want to be a different rate, you want to be a cop when you get out of the military. I use that analogy just because I had a kid on Carter that was his goal.
I only say it like, it's not that I doubt your experience or your time there or whatever and what you dealt with. I just mean like, I wonder, the reason I say I wonder what your numbers were, right, is because somewhere somebody's making decisions based off of the hard data. And if they're looking around at it and the data doesn't, like, it's easy to chalk it up and go, oh, well, CSC just had a garbage couple of years there. And it is what it is. And across the board, though, right, like everything was fine or whatever, right? And that's going to help drive a lot of those big decisions. But somewhere, whatever that data point is going to point towards something. And that's what is, you know, that's just the way the world works.
The thing that got this whole thing started about data, and you talk about data, is like the data is not in for BRS is basically why I brought it up, because we're not going to know here until
it happens.
24, 25 to see. I mean, I guess they could figure out like what the, you know, guys that are and gals that re-enlisted for 4, 5, and 6. I guess they could figure that, see what the difference was before. They're going to
stick around.
Yeah, but then I'm thinking of but
who knows,
the 8,
why?
9, 10, the peeps that are, you know, and I think it is a big group that says like, hey, I'll stick around for shore duty and then bounce. So not, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, when we were at sub school, I was actually talking to my CO about this at the time. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, why do we have such bad, was that Zone B? I think it's, but you know, why do we have such bad Zone B, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so you know, this has happened, COVID. So basically we've locked them in. We've told them that all they can do is come to work and go home. Yeah. And then it's shore duty, which enlisted folks, this is where we make or break. We're about our 8, 9, 10 year point. We go, yep, we're going to stay in, or nope, we're going to get out. But that was, yep, we're going to stay in, because then I'm just going to go, that next 10 and get that, get my retirement. Yeah. Now it's like it's not there. Now, I guess I would see like, hey, how well is, you know, what's the stock market like? How's my 401k, aka, you know, how is that all doing? Is that, you know, to me, those are the things they're looking at, not so much of, well, I got to do 10 more so I can make sure. They could just say, hey, I want to re-enlist for 6 more, or 4 more, 3 more to get.
So then my
hopefully the market will shift. I don't know.
I always heard people say, at least everybody that was pre-BRS, that said that after 20 in a day, you're working because you want to stay in the Navy,
pay. Not you're getting half
you're making half pay, whatever the statement is, right? But there's always
that's not actually true the way that, like,
so as somebody who's in for 20 some odd years, right? Like, do you feel like do you feel like a sucker having not feel like a sucker, but you know what I mean?
Immediately after the guy said it, but
well, it's a double-edged sword though, because like,
not you're making no pay, so.
He's making all the pay. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Bro, there's a reason I haven't worked in 10 months, and it's not because I'm lacking money.
Yeah, he makes his paycheck. Probably
I make an active duty Master Chief paycheck to breathe right now. But the reason, like,
that's medical that part shit, of it, though, on top of it.
Right. Not everybody is where I'm at when they retire, because I went through horrific medical things to be you know, like, so it's like, if I could press
I just mean like
some of that, I would, but
would the pay, like, I think the difference too is that's kind of like I can't think of the word, a specious statement to make because nobody stays until 20. No, nobody stays in.
No, okay.
Specious, like it's like a false dichotomy kind of. You're comparing two things that aren't true.
Can you spell it, please? I don't know. Because I think we're saying the same thing differently, and you're saying it.
Nope, it's not auspicious. That is a different word.
Spell it.
Jamie, look it up.
What is the?
We don't have it, Jamie. That's me, idiot.
I'm going to keep using that.
Auspicious?
No.
How do you spell it?
So,
I'm doing it right now.
Anyways, my point is nobody stays in until 20 without having some sort of affinity towards this job. Like nobody is like, you know what I'll do? Just be absolutely horrendously miserable waiting until I get to 20. Because those people that are that miserable, I think would get out, generally speaking. And the people that tell you they hate it that long for that bad, I think are full of it. And there are plenty of benefits and reasons they're staying in that they don't want to admit to. Because
I mean, I can tell you, if you asked me in the middle of a patrol on that boat, I would have told you I was horrifically miserable and I hated everything and I would run for the hills right now if they let me. And in that moment, I would have. But also, dude, spell it. That's not a word.
SPECIOUS. It is something that is superficially plausible.
Okay. There we go.
But actually wrong.
Is that how you actually say it? Specious?
Yes.
I think it's SH sound. Not you're saying it like it was species.
Specious.
You're saying it weird. Specious. Yeah. That's a new word for me. All right.
I've said it at the same time 12 times.
You did not. I will rewind this tape right now. I will turn this car around.
Rewind that playback 5 minutes.
But I forget what I was talking about. God damn it.
You just couldn't let it go.
Oh yeah. So like I would have gotten out and run for the hills in those moments. But then also like you asked me in the middle of running a chief season and I'd be like, this is the best job ever. So it's like,
exactly. So varies. My point is that those people that hate everything that are like, I'm just struggling through the next 8.5 years. Like, no, you're not. Well, there's something here that's keeping you here, right? I think my point is I think that there is a challenge to tap into whatever that piece is and drag that hook out.
Going back to you pointing in the 1940s USNI articles, McKenna said it in his article, man. It was like that people were just sticking around for the pension. And I really do
and his
believe
example
there are
said
people,
3 years.
Wow, but I think there are really people that get to 10 years and are like, I'm going to ride it out. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that both can't be true. Like that there aren't parts that are redeeming factors
there's always
for them
an exception.
A little bit, but overall they would rather not be in, but they're just like, I just got to ride it out to this pension. You know what I mean? Cause like, you're right. Like I've known people that it's like, the price of admission is just like a bridge too far. Like my buddy he lives locally as well. He separated it as I want to say he was at 15 years. And he had just made senior chief and he's just like, I can't go back to another boat, man. And granted, like he had set himself up in a way that he could,
he got the resume
separate, finish in the reserves and go get a job. And he's okay. Like he had like a real estate portfolio. Like this dude was very prepared to move on, but he had planned on retiring. Like it's not like he was planning on getting out, but after his experience on that boat, he was just like, dude, I can't do this again. Like I cannot.
I would argue that without knowing anything about that dude, that he was planning on the paycheck of retirement, not on sticking it out until retirement. And that's different when he found something else to replace that paycheck for retirement.
I don't
he
agree
no longer
at all.
needed to stick it out till 20.
No, that's not what happened. Like he was not, it's not like he could have stayed home and not gotten a job. It was like he had to get a job. He just was set up in a way that when he gets to retirement, he's not necessarily going to need that pension. And he was just like, I'll just do the reserves thing so that when I'm 60 something, I still get a pension. But
in the Navy's eyes, he still stayed Navy.
Okay. And it was still 1992 instead of 3. So you're wrong. Or vice versa.
As much as I love proving you wrong,
that's fine. I don't, dude. My wife proves me wrong 700 times a day, so it's fine.
I do have to go get my kid off the bus soon.
We wrapping this thing up. That's fine. Oh yeah, that's fine. We can wrap this up here.
We can make it to be continued.
Well, whatever we can. That's fine as well. We got to do some YouTube videos.
or we do a possible
figure this out.
AMA when I'm the guy.
Oh yeah, we can do that
here
too.
For
dude.
it.
I'll facilitate all the things, however you want to do it. We can live stream and put it out in the ethos that, you know, you're going to do an AMA on the podcast. We can do whatever you want to do, man. I don't care.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Let's figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Be that trendsetter. Then you'll start seeing all the air wings doing it and all the other regions doing it.
That's right. And then we'll have MCPON
so.
Aaron, and he'll just do his appearances on here so that I can get all the clout, because I know the MCPON it'll be lit. Right? I'll get all the followers.
And then I'll just be writing on my eval like, I had the idea once to set this up for that guy.
This one time I was on a podcast with the MCPON and I came up with a big brain idea.
Now, there's going to be some check marks on your board
for it.
Yeah.
Like, no.
All right, I hope y'all enjoyed that. I had a good time. Those ones are always fun. Just Chief Bob is the homie. I love him, Big Brain Bob. It's probably going to be the name of the episode. If I haven't actually decided yet, I'm going to have to check out like what kind of like thumbnails and stuff I can create. But I think it's got to be, just because I think that was the joke during the episode, and yeah, I don't know. We just didn't ask the Chief, so I feel like Big Brain Bob is appropriate. But anyway, yeah, good times as always. If you need anything from us, hit us up. Don't give up the shit podcast @gmail.com. You can Facebook message us, Don't Give Up the Shit Podcast, or you can DM us on Instagram, Reddit, or Discord at dgutspodcast. If you want to support us, go to dgutspodcast.com. There's a donate button on the website, or you can go to Don't Give Up the Ship Apparel. It's dgutspodcast.com. Get yourself some naval pride and heritage gear you'll actually wear in public. And then probably the best way is patreon.com/dgutspodcast. Go check out one of the 5 tiers, pick the one that fits you the best, and become a patron today. It really helps us expand the platform and pay all the bills to support the existing structure and those expansions. So really, really appreciate that. If you can do that. Right. If you don't got the money to throw our way, I completely understand. The best way to support us otherwise, without spending any money, is just like, share, subscribe, review on all the platforms for all the things. Like subscribe on YouTube, share the videos, tag your friends in the social media posts, send them the link to the podcast, whatever makes the most sense for your situation and is easiest and works best for you. All of that stuff helps. It exploits the algorithms and just gets the, word of mouth going and gets the word out to the people who need it. So if you can't spend any money, we completely understand. Just you showing up and listening is support enough. But if you can and you're willing to do any of those things, money or no money, we really, really appreciate it. And with that, that's it. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't give up the ship. Hey, big shout out to our level 5 patrons, William McIver and Victoria Livingood, to all the other patrons and everyone that supports us. We couldn't do it without you. You're allowing us to expand the platform, pay all these bills, and continue to push out just awesome content for you as much as is humanly possible. And we really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Please hit the like button, drop a comment down below on what you thought, and subscribe to the channel.